Okay, I think we should start. It's 5 minutes past 1. Welcome to you all. My name is Anke Kouwmans. It is working. Yeah, it's now better working. Okay. Well, welcome to you all. This is the third meeting of Pricca Practice, the third expert meeting. And for those of you, my name is Anke Kouwmans. I am Professor Image in Context at this school, Academy Minerva, and Pricca Practice is one of the research strands within my research domain. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I like to explain firstly a bit about Pricca Practice. The expertise is Center Pricca Practice. Pricca Practice stands for Photographic Research in Cross-Cultural and Cross-Disciplinary Artistic Practices. The center is interested in all kinds of artistic research practices in which photography is used in one way or another way as a means to get a better insight in the world we are living in and the people who are part of that world. So that's the center. In Pricca Practice, we wish to address the photographer who is a researcher of that part of the world that surrounds him, the artist using photography in his search, and also the ethnographer who understands the values of photography. In their use of photography, their research practices can be considered as dialogical practices. As a consequence, this is a consequence of the special capacity of the photographic image as the photographic image as kind of speaks back to the photographer. When you take a photo, you let the outside world in a more or less controlled way come into your camera and become an image. We call this the indexical strength of photography. What is present in the outside world leaves traces in the camera. A photograph is the immediate proof of the existence of the objects or persons photographed. For me, as a viewer, this is magical. I look back in time and I bridge distance in space. And for a moment, this man, who was living in Uganda more than about 70 years ago, is looking back at me as I'm looking at him. Of course, I know he's just an image. But it's an image that gives me the feeling of the presence of something which is far removed in time and distant in space. Roland Barthes calls this the punctum of the image, its hypnotizing strength, the wounding, personally touching part of the photo which establishes a direct relationship between the viewer and the person within it. But let us go back to the one taking the pictures. In this process, the photograph not only represents what the photographer wanted the photograph to represent, it always also represents something more, something else, and in that way, photography becomes a dialogical process. The photograph talks back. In photography, as research practice, a dialogue occurs between the photographer, who becomes viewer of the picture he took, and the photograph itself. But photography is also dialogical in another respect. A photograph asks questions about what is represented. It asks, in the word of Roland Barthes, for anchorage, specific information about place, people, and time. Because specific information about place, people, and time is not in the photograph. It is only in the minds of the people that recognize it. This becomes very clear on Andrea Stultjen's Uganda in Process Facebook page. As she is an outsider in relation to the photographs of the Ugandan people, places and events she finds in all kinds of collection and archives, she puts them on the internet and asks people to add the anchoring information. Who are these people? Where are they? And what is the context of the photos? She asks questions based on her ignorance. They give answers based on their knowledge. Photography is in this sense more about not knowing than about knowing. Or, if I may use the even more radical words on the back of the last booklet of Andrea Stultjens, uttered by the son of the Ugandan photographer Musea Katurama. Here it comes. A photograph is somebody's private eye. You can't know what it is about unless it was your eye. The topic of today is bridging distances. Today we will talk about the way a photograph can bridge the distance between the absence of the person represented and the presence of this person at the moment the photo is taken. A photograph leads us to the person that is absent, or as Hans Belting wrote in Expertmeeting Body, it all started with the possibility of images replacing the absent dead person. And he says it like this. A given community felt threatened by the gap caused by the loss of one of its members. The dead, as a result, were kept as present and visible in the ranks of the living via their images. This power of the photograph to bridge distances in time and space is also used in the work of Miki Kratzman, an Israeli photographer, on another public Facebook page called People I Met. He asks for more explicit information about the people who accidentally appeared in the photographs he took in the Palestinian areas. And here again you see this dialogical strength of the photographs I talked about in the beginning. There's always more in the photo than you aimed for in the beginning. So these persons kind of did an appeal on him. He not only wants to know who they are, but also what happened to them in the light of the Israeli attacks on Palestine. This is the info on his Facebook page. In all the years of Kratzman's work, he captured many regular people who just happened to be around the event he was shooting. As a part of his research, he's trying to find out what happened to those regular people, the ones that by chance appeared in the photos. What were they doing there at the day of the shoot? What happened to them since? Did any of those people die in the conflict and become shahid? And I looked it up, and shahid means martyr in this context. So the relationship between an image and death is literally put in the center of this project. These photos bridge the gap the people left behind when they were shot or killed in another way by Israeli soldiers. But what I like most about both examples, the Uganda in Process page and the History in Progress Uganda page, and this page, is the already position of not knowing, which position both researchers had. Perhaps they can be called researchers exactly for the reason that they have the courage to take this position of not knowing what I'm looking at, not knowing what happened, and because of this position, bridging distances by asking and inviting the other to become part of a process in which trying to get to know what somebody else can contribute is the key issue. It is as simple as that. Okay, you will see, or you have seen in the exhibition outside this room, individual and co-creative visual practices as practices of searching to bridge the gap between me and the distant other. And you will also find it in the conversations that will take place this afternoon. For this afternoon, I hope my talk will invite us all to become part of a process in which everybody's knowledge and questions are valuable. Andrea Stultjens will be the moderator for this afternoon. She will introduce the speakers to you and she will tell you what the program will be. Andrea.
Okay, thank you, Anke. We have a slightly changed program. Unfortunately, he might not be the only one, and I'm very tired, so that's why I might be stumbling over my words a bit. But Ahmed Polat, unfortunately, is not with us this afternoon because he's sick, and he regrets that a lot, but that's the way it is. We do have with us today Ben Kreewinkel, who will tell you about his work and how he tries to bridge distances in that. I hope that after that we can have some discussion, and since we are a nice intimate group, that shouldn't be too much of a problem, I think. And then we will have a break, during which you can still see the exhibition if you haven't yet, because that will be the subject of the second part of the afternoon, during which our Ugandan guests, which is also why we speak English this afternoon, will introduce you to themselves and their experiences with this project, with being here now, distances bridged even in, just taking an airplane, and what that has done to them. So Irian Subuga, who is a lecturer at Uganda Christian University, will speak, and before him, Sarah Ijangolet and Britt van Sloen, who has participated in this project and is still participating in this project as an intern. And I will also add some of my experiences during this whole process, which will then hopefully also lead to a discussion with you, hearing your thoughts on it and the way it comes across to you. So the whole afternoon is, as was the case with the previous Pricca practices, very much meant as a way to engage with each other and exchange views. The people who take place in front of the table, or behind the table actually, are the people giving something that we can talk about, but then it's really the idea that we exchange the ideas between us all, as we are all experts in this expert meeting, and not only the people on this side of the table. Okay, Ben, thank you very much for coming. And we need to switch computers, huh? The small technical moment. Ben has a background in photojournalism, studied the Master's Photographic Studies. That's also where we met some years ago, and is currently working still as a photographer and as a teacher. I don't know exactly where, but maybe you can introduce. School of Journalism in Utrecht. And I think you will introduce the project yourself, huh?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Are you going to use that microphone or this one?
I think I can better use this one.
Yeah, then you're not jumping up and down. Yeah. Is that something that goes on its own? Yes, it does. Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming. Thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank Andrea for inviting me here. And secondly, I would like to apologize for my lousy English. Hopefully it will get better during this talk. Andrea introduced me a bit. My name is Ben Kreewinkel. I'm a teacher in photography at the School of Journalism in Utrecht. I studied history in Amsterdam and in Pretoria, South Africa. And actually I studied like modern African history. And I wrote a thesis on the role women played in the revolutionary struggle in Mozambique. Soon I will publish a book on the Mozambican Revolution, a photo book, which also includes some veteran soldiers from the war. But this talk I would like to explain and talk a little bit about two projects, or actually it's only one. It's a book I published in 2012. It's called A Possible Life. And yeah, actually we are now working on the follow-up of that book. It's called Il m'a sauvé. My French is not as well, it's not good as well, but it's a French title, and it's the follow-up of this book. I think what I like to do, I have this presentation here. I like to talk a little bit about the project, and please feel free to ask questions during my talk if some things are not clear to you. Well, first of all, I'd like to tell a little bit about this, the inspiration I got for this project. I studied history, as I told you, and I always liked photographs in history books, and I preferred books which contain a lot of photographs. And after my studies, my study of history, I went to the Photo Academy in Amsterdam. I studied like photojournalism, documentary photography, and after that I did this the master of it's called photographic studies in Leiden. When for the first time I saw this book, I read this book and I saw the exhibition. I think it's quite a well-known project by Ad van Denderen. It's called Go No Go, and it's about like migrants who want to come to Europe, and especially also the way European governments are trying to block migrants to cross the borders. I thought it was a really good project and a really good body of work. And actually, when I saw this for the first time, I thought, okay, this is what I want to do myself. And I started to get like also interested in undocumented people who were living in the Netherlands. After my studies of history, I worked for a while at an asylum seeker center in the Amsterdam harbors. And there I got to know like many people from all over the world who were applying for asylum in the Netherlands. It was actually the first stage of this whole process in becoming Dutch. And what was really interesting, or for me it was really interesting, there were at that time, when I was working there were many people from Angola. I just happened to study a lot about the former Portuguese African colonies. So for me it was really nice to talk with them about the history of the country and etc. And as you can see, well, in a way I just try to copy Ad van Denderen's style. It's not as good as Ad van Denderen, but it was like a first step in becoming a photographer. What I also noticed, and it was really interesting, and at that moment it wasn't really, how do I say, clear to me that was something which really interested me. There were many people from Nigeria staying at the place where I was working. And the problem people from Nigeria had, like, for them it was really difficult to get like asylum, to get the papers in the Netherlands. So many of them were saying to us that they were from Sierra Leone or from Liberia. Just for them it would be easier if the Dutch government or the Dutch authorities would believe they were coming from these countries, which were at the civil war at that time. They would more easily get access to the Netherlands. So what we noticed, and I spoke here, this is Michael, he's from Nigeria, but we often saw these documents which were made by the authorities, and sometimes, yeah, you could guess, like it was like on the paper it was like that the people were from Liberia or Sierra Leone. Actually, we knew that they weren't coming from those places. But fortunately, it was not my problem. It was not my task to give them access to the Netherlands. We were just supplying bed and breakfast, etc. But after some time, I didn't feel really comfortable working there and working for a government and doing things which I really didn't want to do, because like we were in a way like blocking people access to the Netherlands. So I stopped working there, and I went to the Photo Academy, and there I worked further on photographing undocumented people. And it was quite hard, because people didn't want to become to be photographed. Here, like almost nothing, and we can see the pictures a bit better if you see it on my screen here. But I photographed some people who were at their sleeping place in Amsterdam Zuidoost in the Belmen. And yeah, the problem I had was like I wasn't allowed to show their faces, obviously. They didn't want to be recognizable in the pictures. And it was no problem for me in the beginning, because I just used the light to anonymize them. But in the end, yeah, it got a little bit too difficult. Like, people were also asking big fees to be photographed. Again, understandably, they just wanted to have some money for the photographs. Money I didn't have, so I got a little bit frustrated by this project. And the person we see here was actually one of the first people I photographed in this project, but he was also the only one who never asked money, or he didn't ask anything from me. He said, I just want to help you. You can take pictures of me, and if you can tell our story to the people in the Netherlands, I'll be happy to cooperate. And well, until now, his name was I always had to refer to this man as Golbert. He's also called Golbert in the book A Possible Life, but we can now call him Jean, because he's not in the Netherlands anymore, and he went back to Niger. But so I will call him Jean from now on. Jean was a really nice man, and we became friends. So I know him now since I think 2006, so for quite a long time. And well, when I was photographing Jean, I got a little bit frustrated, because Jean was not the archetypal refugee which I was looking for. He was not the man which I'm trying to depict, like, for example, Ad van Denderen was taking photographs of people. So, well, Jean is a middle-aged man, and he was living here. Here you can see him with the landlord, Wim. And Wim was like, he said, okay, you can stay in a room here. You don't have to pay rent if you can't pay for the rent. So we'll leave it like that. Jean had a job, and I actually also talked to people who were crammed up together in one small room, for instance, or at an attic in a home. Those pictures I was looking for in the beginning, I have to admit. And like those were the pictures like which are exciting in a way, in a photojournalistic kind of thinking I had then. But then I thought, okay, we were taking these pictures of Jean, and I still had to anonymize him. So I used, in the beginning, these are like old pictures. I was anonymizing him by using shadows and the light. What I said, Jean didn't ask money. He never asked for anything, but his family was. And that was like the first time actually I knew about it, that the family back home, they were often, of course, asking for money, because Jean was earning money in the Netherlands to support his family over there in Niger. And he often got like mails from his wife, postcards from nieces, in which they were asking, do you have something for us? Don't you forget us? Can you send some money? I actually also spoke to his wife once. And of course, again, understandably, Jean started to ask, okay, after a while, I think it took almost like one year, 1.5 years before he for the first time asked money from me. And then he said, okay, my mother is ill, she's in hospital, do you have like something for her? And I gave him something, but yeah, he kept on asking. And again, I totally understand, but I just told him, Jean, I'm sorry, I'm not a really rich person, which is, of course, I'm richer than Jean and his family, obviously, but I just couldn't support his family in Niger. So I said, okay, Jean, there's only one way we can try to get some money for you. It was also at a time when he lost his job, like the crisis started, and he didn't have a job as a cleaner. So maybe that was also a reason why he started to ask me and people around me and in his environment. So I said, okay, Jean, there's only one thing we can do, and I would like to try that for you. We are going to apply for some money, and we are going to make a piece of art. And we are going to make a book, if you want, about your life. You will become the writer, and I will become the photographer. And you will be in charge of the story. It's your story we are going to tell. and we will also like the revenues from the book we will split. So he agreed, and well, Jean started to write about his life. It was actually not like the story I had in my mind, so it was like also interesting that our ideas about the project were a little bit different. And I noticed that when I was talking to Jean, his stories were quite more interesting than what he was writing about. Like I asked him to write something about his situation, and I got like a piece of paper in which he was explaining that Niger is a landlocked country, and he was talking about the heat, but he was not actually referring and talking about the situation he and his family were in. When I talked to him, his story was, in my opinion, it was much more interesting. So I said, okay, do you think it's a good idea that I interview you? I filmed the whole conversation, and we use like excerpts from the interview for the book. He said, okay, it's no problem for him. I think he was also happy that he didn't have to write anymore. So it was quite good. There were like some differences in the idea about like making money from an art project. Like I knew a book is not making you rich. In a way, Jean expected to become really successful and famous all over the world with the book. I explained it to him, Jean, beware, we are not going to make a lot of money from the book, but fortunately he got some money from different instances, and even the Dutch government paid him. Like the Amsterdam municipality gave him money for his writing, and it was quite nice because actually at that time we were in a way committing a crime. I was sending money to Niger, to his family. The money we got from the government, we sent it to his family. I thought, okay, we'll see what happened according to the PVV, and it was like het gedoog, de gedoogconstructie. I'm looking for the word in English, but there was like a construction in the government which said like undocumented people, they are criminals, and people who are helping undocumented people are criminals as well. So I thought, okay, we're just going to put this in the book to have a proof that I'm helping him, and it would be, I would also be the criminal. There was also like some kind of idea like, it would be really nice if they arrest me for this. It would be like a lot of publicity. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Fortunately for Jean, he didn't get arrested, but I spoke with him about what would happen if they would arrest him. But he was totally aware of the dangers. He was being part of the project, like the half. He was the writer, and he was also. I also told him, okay, you can censure all the pictures you want. Like I didn't want to do all these pictures with shadow, etc. I said, I'm going to take the picture, and you just scratch your face out of the photograph so that people won't recognize you. It's funny because some photographs he thought, okay, I'm not recognizable in this picture, and I said, oh, you are completely recognizable in this picture. But he said, no, it is 10 years old, and 10 years ago I did look a lot different than now. Okay, I said, okay, it's up to you, no problem. But we knew, and we spoke to many people, when you make a book like this and you get like all this publicity, the Dutch government or the police is not like hunting down a specific person. It would cause like a lot of unrest, especially in the Bijlmermeer. Well, and to come back to your question, you said like, why was Jean not like this person, this archetypal refugee? Well, in the beginning he was like, he came to the Netherlands, and he lived like all the time he has been living in Amsterdam Zuidoost. And here you have a picture. I started to walk with him, and I said, okay, show me all the places where you have been living these last 10 years. And this note shows like all the places where he stayed, and he has been ripped off for many times by many people. But when I met him, like he was in a way he was kind of settled. But But even then, like this whole habitat, it was only Amsterdam Zuidoost. I actually wonder if he ever left Amsterdam during his 10-year stay in the Netherlands. Of course, I got to know him better, and it was not really like the money and the place where he was staying that was really bad for him or frustrating. It was, of course, the absence of his children and his wife. And we talked a lot about his family back in Niger. And well, actually, these photos here, these children are not Jean's children, but the children of Tony. He's the roommate of Jean. Jean didn't want to have like pictures of his own children around the house, but Tony didn't care, and he just put like his family in the communal room. But I thought, okay, this absence and this that you don't see your children for 10 years, it was like completely strange for me. I thought I couldn't imagine how somebody can leave his family behind. And I asked him, can you show some, do you have pictures of your family? And then he got like with a box, and in this box were like postcards. Here you see a postcard. This is a postcard from his niece. And he was actually a bit angry with his niece because she was like writing him this card. He said, she never talked to me in Niger, but now I'm in Europe and now she wants something from me. She's pregnant and she wants something from me. But like also, there are the letters from his children. He has a lot of children, and they were quite like sad. They are really missing him, and they are writing that they don't recognize him anymore. So for the book, we teamed up with Annette Kouwenhoven. She's a designer, and she works a lot with migrant people. She did many projects on this subject. So we started to integrate like all these documents in the book. And the book tells actually two stories. The life of Jean is being told through documents, official documents, letters from his children, personal photographs, and the other side of the book is my view on his life. And that's actually that's the traditional documentary kind of style, sad, dark pictures. And of course, we did it on purpose because I found out myself the story I was telling with my pictures alone. That's not the complete story. So here we see John with actually also Tony on the picture. That's in Amsterdam Zuidoost, and the other pictures were sent by his family once in a while, so that he could see how his children were growing. This whole story about his family back in Niger started to get really interesting, and of course it's a big part of the book. His family once came to the Netherlands. They were with the whole family. They applied for asylum, and after some time, his wife, Jean's wife, told him, "I don't want to stay here anymore. I can't live in the Netherlands. I'm going back to Niger." And she took all the children with her. And you see here, this is like some kind of a form in which they are applying. And the names are all fake. There are different names. They didn't use their own name. But they tried to get asylum here in the Netherlands. What is really sad in a way is like in these 2 or 3 months, his wife was in the Netherlands. She became pregnant, and she left. And 7 months after she left, Jean's latest twin was born. He has 3 twins. He is also a twin. Yeah, I forgot to tell. Just go back. Here we also see his twin sister, and she died from AIDS. And I noticed that in Niger there's a very high percentage of twin people. So he has 3 twins, and the latest one, Hassan and Hussein, are there, and he never saw them up until now. But when I spoke to him, he didn't see them. He only knew them from the pictures. And it was funny, he knew my children better than his own children, and that was, for me, that was quite unbelievable. Like he had held my babies, and he was there. He was not there when Jonathan and Sarah were born, but he visited me, And actually my children still know him. And for me that was like really unbelievable that you know somebody else's children and your own children are like kind of strangers to you. And then there was also like the position of his wife. And it was also something what shifted my view on his wife, shifted throughout the whole project. His wife, he was always talking about his family and how much he loved his wife. And I also thought like it's difficult for Jean to get a staying permit in the Netherlands. Like younger people could easily marry a Dutch woman, and that would be a way to get a passport or something. And I always thought like Jean, he didn't have this opportunity. But then I noticed, or he actually told me that his wife actually asked him, why don't you just marry another woman and then you get like a passport and then we will be able to get more money. You can find a job. So, and actually Jean also, when the book was almost finished, Jean told me that he wanted to go back to Niger. He really wanted to go back, but actually his wife was asking, no, please stay there, please stay in the Netherlands. It's the only way we are getting a little bit of money. But the money, like the well was drying up really quickly. But here we see like Jean with a Dutch woman, and he tried to marry her, but it didn't work out quite well. But in the book, like the design is like you see these pictures of his marriage with his wife in Niger. They are like juxtaposed with the photos with the Dutch woman. Okay, so we finished in a way. We finished the project, and it was like we had like really nice critical reviews on it. But I thought, okay, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to work on this Mozambique book. And just before I left for Mozambique, I saw on Facebook, I saw that Jean was married, and to a woman in the Netherlands. So I called him. I said, Jean, I see that you are married. Congratulations. Tell me a little bit more. And I think he didn't want me to know, but yeah, that's the power of Facebook. So I asked him, and he said, no, I got divorced with my wife in Niger. I married here, but I'm going back to Niger, and I'm going to apply there for a Dutch passport. So he went back to Niger, and he got his. You have to do a test. He had to go to Mali to do a test there, and actually he passed that test. So it's just a question of time when he's coming back to the Netherlands. But of course, I said to Jean, now you're going back to Niger, I'm coming after you. And I asked him, is it possible for me to talk to your children there and your wife or your ex-wife? I want to see how the situation is there. I want to do a follow-up for the book. And he agreed. He thought, okay, no problem. And it was really nice because like I got the idea that I knew his children from all these letters and the pictures, and they were small. And then we met them for real. It's a little bit strange, but we thought, okay, it's really interesting to ask them and to talk to them about their how they felt about the absence of their father. And it was like, in a way, it was really, really emotional because something happened to the family. The family is, in a way, it's falling apart. Like the twin boys, they never saw their father. They didn't know anything about the concept of fatherhood. To them, like Jean was their uncle or something. We also found out like that was really nice in the house. We saw like pictures from the children which were taken in the Netherlands. Jean never told that the children were in a school, in a basisschool, in a primary school in the Netherlands. Was quite interesting. We also asked them, what do you remember from the Netherlands? But it was not that much. So for the next book, we went to Niger and we interviewed the family of Jean, his mother, his children. And the problem was like with the small children, they were all like giving like socially acceptable answers. We didn't got to know too much. Some of the stories were really contradictory, so they were not like all telling the truth. It was also really interesting. So for the book, we thought like the girl in the middle, that's Sarah, and that's Jean's eldest daughter, and we make her the protagonist of the new book. She told the most interesting story because she was like already like 16 when Jean left for the Netherlands, and she has a really good story to tell, which we of course aanvullen. We added with the stories of her brothers and sisters. This is also the only picture I believe we show her because she asked us. We heard it later. She didn't want to be photographed. She's married to a man, to a Muslim man, who's working now in Ghana, and she didn't want to be depicted anymore. So she also took off her photograph from her Facebook site. The other children didn't have any problem. It's also maybe it's interesting to say like Niger is a Muslim country. It has a really small minority of Christian people. Jean's father and mother, his father was a Christian, a Catholic, and his mother is a Muslim. And actually he is also Christian, and his wife or ex-wife is a Muslim. So we actually just started to work on the first dummy for the book. It's called Il m'a sauvé. It means something like he has saved me, and it's actually something Jean's ex-wife. She's referring to me actually. Like at a certain moment, I was the only one who was sending the money for the family, just from the revenues from the book. We didn't choose this title to tell what nice person I am, but just about the situation. And the story which we are telling is the main line of the main story is a story Sarah is telling. But of course it gets really complicated, but also interesting when you have like conflicting stories from some other people. And Jean is telling a different story than his ex-wife. And I'm actually, in the next book, it's also about like different opinions Annette Kouwenhoven and I have about the situation. Like at a certain point, she was like talking really negative about Jean. I said, no, he's not that bad. He's actually, I understand why he's doing this. And then we had like discussions, are they really divorced or not? So we don't know. We are not going to make conclusions. We just put the text and the interviews in the book, and it's up to the reader to make a decision. But yeah, the story from Sarah is really interesting. Here we have like the twin brothers Hassan and Hussein, two really nice fellows. On the right, it's Noureddin. It's Sarah's daughter. So Jean became also a granddad, and he had to miss like the marriage of his daughter, which is in a way also some kind of a shame. And people are really like blaming Jean for this, for being absent during the marriage of his daughter. This is Jamil. He is also crew, and this is a particular sad story because Jamil was not like Jean's brightest child. So he was like Jean was a little bit. He's a teacher. He's an English teacher, and he was like, he was a bit ashamed about his son. He's a smart guy, but he's not doing as well as his brothers and sisters. And he dreams of about being a soccer player. And he asked us, and he was actually thinking that we could introduce him to the people from Ajax or Barcelona. He was really hoping that, and he was angry when we interviewed him about his father, and we were not talking about soccer. So we also had to learn something about doing interviews. Maybe we should show some interest in his soccer dreams. Some weeks ago, I got a sad message from Jean that Jamil had an accident with a motorbike, and he had been kept in a coma for a month. So he suffered brain damage, and we actually, that's a really sad part. So he won't be able to play soccer. So this dream is completely away. So I wonder what is going to happen here. And that's also a part of the story. The story is still developing. Annette and I, for us, it's really difficult to say, okay, this is the end of the story. In the dummy, we are thinking about putting in the book. We want to put all the different dummies we made in a way also to show that the story never ends. Like we make more and more and more books. And what kind of story do we want to tell? Because we are, of course, we are telling the story about many people, but it's still a story. There are many other possibilities. Well, here we have some of the children here. Jamil. And actually here, when we were taking pictures and we were filming this whole soccer match, it was also like, in a way, it was staged. Jamil was the best soccer player at once. I think he was like really playing, and he was playing well, but I don't think he was good enough for Ajax. So it felt a bit sad, because we were saying, okay, we can take this film, we will put it on YouTube, and we will show some people, because Annette knows like somebody with Ajax. So she actually showed the film to the man, and he said, no, even if you were good enough, he's too old. So that's a really tough thing. He's too old to become a soccer player in Europe. We also met, of course, other people here. For instance, this is a nephew of Jean, actually the son of his deceased twin sister. We talked with him also. He's living with Jean's mother. Jean, when he was in the Netherlands, he also had to support the children of his deceased sister. And Annette and I, we really want to tell, like, not only the story from Jean, but we also want to find out why people want to leave Niger, and can everybody leave this country? And we also ask the children, and some of Sarah doesn't even want to leave. She said, no, I don't want to leave Niger. We don't want to go to Europe anymore, or they just want to stay there. But there are also people like this girl. She is a worker for Jean's niece. And I can imagine for many European people it's quite strange, like Jean is coming to Europe to earn money, but in his family he's on a higher social level than some other people. And some might argue that this girl is some kind of a modern slave. For her there's no opportunity to get on a higher social ladder. That was really interesting, in front of the church we met here Gibril. He is from Benin, if I remember correctly, and he was actually trying to go to Europe, and he got stuck in the desert. He got stuck in Libya, and he had to go back. His money, he ran out of money, and he had to go back, and now he's stuck in Niger. So he's actually asking the church, the Catholic Church, for food and drinks. And he's in exactly the same situation as I met Jean when he was in the Netherlands. Jean was also at the church asking for food, etc. Or not exactly for food, but asking for work and these kind of things. Well, to end this story, like a very important person, of course, is Jean's wife or ex-wife. She was there when we were, and she had like a big role in the family life. So that was also why we thought, okay, they were telling she married a woman, or she met a man in Nigeria, and they told us she was only here for to help Sarah with her child. But like, as I said, like all children were like telling some contradictory stories, and well, from these stories we could conclude that she's there all the time. So it's quite different. I really doubt if they are divorced, but it doesn't matter that much. Last year, the mother, we also interviewed Jean's mother, and actually her story was the most complicated and emotional. She was really suffering from the absence of her son, and because she also needs her children to support her, and it was quite an emotional story. As I said, we are just in a phase of we collected all these interviews, text, photographs, and now we are working and seeing how can we use this to write a story or make a story about the situation in Niger. Well, I don't know how much time I've got, but I think I'm finished. So maybe you have some questions. Or thank you.
I can shout. It's not really necessary for me to use the microphone, but then the recording will not be able to pick it. So that's why I'm using it anyway. I hope, or I think you will have some questions, but one thing that I now noticed listening to you, when I asked you to participate today, it was on the basis of the book that for me helped me to understand more about the situation of an undocumented life, or a life that cannot be documented for certain reasons. So there it was bridging a distance. But now listening to you, what you are actually seem to be doing is documenting distances instead of bridging them. Or is that too big a leap?
Yeah, I think you are right. We just noticed. I think for this particular story, it's quite difficult to bridge this distance. There are just differences between me and Jean. Like we are good friends, but there's always this situation that I am somebody who has a job, who has work, or money, these kind of things, family. And Jean, there is this unbalance in a relationship, and I call him my friend, and I really like him, but it's a different kind of friendship I have with other people, of course, because this unbalance, I don't think I will be able to get this in balance, actually.
Yeah, but that is still only the distance between you and him, but then there's the distance between him and his family that just seems to be growing bigger and bigger over time.
Yeah, I wonder if my project will help, will be helpful for that. The funny thing was also funny, like when we were there, we asked like the children if they knew the book, and he never showed the book to his family. They knew about a book, but in a way, they thought, okay, well, I don't know why, but they didn't seem to be interested in the book, and that was something I wouldn't have. I didn't expect when I started to make the book. Coming back to your question, no, I don't know if I will be able to bridge this distance. The book and the project will be helpful because we are also using it, for instance, for the Wereldhuis, an organization which is helping undocumented people. And in this case, it might function as some kind of a bridge. But I don't think the way...
and then you can think about what is then the value of documenting the distances, actually. If that is what you...
Well, when we were making the book, it was like... I also made it as an accusation to the Dutch policy. And I just wanted to show how people were suffering because of government rules. Like, for instance, this is in the cover of the book. It contains all the, how do you say, de regeringsverklaringen.
Governmental declarations?
The governmental declarations according to migrant people. And you see that they, the way we look at migrants or undocumented people is changing. Like from when Jean came here, he was like, in a way, he was, people didn't feel too bad about him. And at the end with the PVV, migrants were being criminalized. So Jean is not changing, but the way we are looking at him and people like Jean, that is changing. And I really felt bad about that. And it's like an accusation.
Yeah, thank you, John. As an African, I mean John,
no problem.
The character, haunting character of Africa. I want to ask two questions. Do you think your images of his story are a representative depiction of the abilities, aspirations, opportunities, and the challenges of the Africans in the global space? And then the second one, I hope you got it. The second one is...
No, sorry.
Yeah, or maybe I need to stand. I'm speaking as an African, and for me this is always personal when we have to have the story told from Europe about Africa and what's really happening in Africa. And I want to ask you, from your experience with this, do you think that your story with John and these images are a representative depiction of the abilities, the aspirations, the opportunities, and the challenges of the African in the global setting or the global space.
Maybe let him just answer this one first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. No, I don't think I can tell this story as a European. So I'm just trying, and that is also why we were asking the children of Jean and the people around him how they felt about it. But of course, that's also a certain story. We are always like choosing something to show, and in a way they are also responsible for this construction of the book. Like, so I don't know. Maybe there are. I suppose there are like people in Niger who have a different story. I also showed we also interviewed other people which are not in the presentation, but we are going to tell their stories also in the book. But I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm telling just a story. I cannot tell like a complete story about this country.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. And also the fact that you are a photojournalist. How do you fight the flow of the stream in photojournalism to depict Africa in a certain way, in a certain mold?
Yes.
And how do you fight that?
Okay, this is a good question. And actually, Andrea referred to me as a photojournalist, and actually, I have to say I'm not. You won't ever see a picture of me, a news picture in the newspaper. And I totally agree with you. Maybe if we are talking about the way many African countries are being depicted in the Western media. Yeah, no. I think it's more interesting to make like broader documentaries, and also to cooperate, of course, with African people themselves. I know Africa is a continent, so but it's generalizing now. I would always like to in projects. I would like to cooperate with people, and the thing is with the family of Jean. That's also why we use Sarah as a protagonist, because she has the best story. Not for us, which we thought, okay, this is a nice story for us to tell, but it looks like she's clever. She knows what she's talking about. She could talk about the situation, her personal situation. So, in my opinion, that is a much more layered story if we are letting her tell the story than when I was as a European trying to tell the story. I'm just listening to them, and we are using all these stories to construct a bigger story, which of course still is only one story. There can be many stories being told.
Yeah. Did I see a question rising here?
What is your personal interest to tell this story? I wondered.
You mean Jean's story, of the story about undocumented people?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I don't have a clear question for that. I don't know how I became interested in African history, or especially Southern African history, and then modern Africa. So like the revolution in Mozambique and Angola, I'm really interested in it. I don't know where this come from. Like it's the same. Why would I be interested in the Middle Ages or something?
Your job at the center, no?
Yeah, no, but that was after I studied history.
Oh, okay.
So I started to work there. Of course, I studied African history, or modern African history, and then I went to this to work there. And for me, it was really interesting. I'm just interested in people. So it's not. Yeah, and it just happens to be many times African subjects.
Yeah, the distance is very far, and we know the Western society, so it must be difficult to make the step.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm fully aware of that because I also like, especially Western photographers or journalists get like criticized a lot for their one way of depicting some topics in Africa. And for instance, I also did like a reportage on the so-called poor whites. I actually wrote a thesis about the way poor white people in South Africa have been depicted throughout the last century. And when I came there and I started to ask around if I could take photographs of people, many white Afrikaners, South Africans, they got angry with me. Were like, why do you want to do this? You are putting them in a, or your kind of people are putting them in a you are showing them in a bad situation. And the funny thing was like, also, many of the people I've been portraying there became friends. And there are many ways of taking pictures of people, but I always think it's important to let them do the talking because they know better about the situation and the country, etc., than I do. But in a way, I don't agree with the criticism, the general criticism on Western journalists who are working in Africa that they don't know, they cannot do this work because they don't know about, because I think I know more about Mozambican revolutionary history than some Mozambicans. Like there are also like British historians who know more about Dutch history than maybe I do. So in a way, but I'm totally. I think I agree, but I don't know if it was your point. But I agree that a lot of depicting a lot of work done by Western journalists, I don't like it as well. I think it's short-sighted in some, and I can imagine that some people will say the same about this project.
How do you deal with that when teaching? Because there you may not be a photojournalist yourself or consider yourself to be a photojournalist, but you're teaching journalism.
Yes, I'm trying to change.
Yeah, so how do you approach that then? How do you try to or is it necessary even ask students still going in that way that you don't like?
Yes, the way photography is being taught at the School of Journalism is the way people took photographs like the last 50 years or something. And I'm really feeling bad about it, and I'm trying to change that. But yeah, it's a big institute. It takes a lot of time to change, and also to change the mind of some people who are working there and who are working there for a long time.
So how do you start that little bit? What is the strategy to start changing that? Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, in photojournalism, many times photojournalists have to find a picture. Like sometimes a writing journalist write a piece. That's the way we are teaching the students at the School of Journalism.
Could it have to do with what you actually mentioned a few times, that you didn't find what you were looking for?
Yeah, actually, often they are repeating pictures somebody else already did, and I was the same. I did the same when I started to do photography, but and I really like Ad van Denderen. It's a great piece of work, and it's nothing wrong. But he also changed his approach of photography. He doesn't work in black and white anymore, and he doesn't work in this traditional mode of reportage. And it's not. I'm not completely against it, but I think there are now so many more ways to tell stories and to tell stories about other people, about the situation in the country, than just flying in, take pictures for a while. And
so it's stimulating experimental narratives then?
For instance,
an approach
yeah.
to try to...
and also what I think it's good that journalists or documentary photographers, that they specialize in some kind of a topic. Like photojournalists, they have to cover everything in a way. Like at the newspaper, they're saying, okay, we need a picture of Gaza, for instance, and they fly to Gaza. It's an old situation. They come back with some pictures, and then they go somewhere else. I think it's good for photographers to because those pictures can be taken by people who are living there, they can also take these pictures. You don't need a photojournalist from Europe to take these pictures. So I think it's good to try as a photographer to find an approach by yourself. You are also like an author. The way you are writing or constructing the story is the way you are doing this. And yeah.
Wait. Is that a difference for you between the documentary way and the journalistic way, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And even, the documentary, there's a lot of debate about documentary style. What is documentary photography? Can you stage photographs? Is it allowed to? But I think that's a very different and difficult discussion. But I teach my students that they should approach this with a wide open view, and they shouldn't be like, there's only one way to depict the story.
So, oh, yes, Anke.
Well, maybe it's more a remark than a question. What I really liked about your story and the way you are portraiting is that you all the time you ask yourself, how can I make a portrait? So in a way, your work is more about asking questions. How the hell can I do it? And how can I do it in an honest way? And you choose the most difficult subject or person. And you show the difficulties and not just the results. I would say I like that about it.
Well, yeah, thank you. But that's also like what, especially the news photographs. It's little bit difficult to talk about because it's still in progress. And we are just in it is a work in progress. But with the first book, it's also like I was really wondering, like, am I doing this the right way? Am I not this journalist from Europe who is? And I'm actually also criticizing myself in the book, and I don't mind about it. So I don't mind the criticism. It's not that I like it, but it's it's also a way. Like it's also the book is also about the way I see things, and is it a correct story? And if it's not, then okay, it's not a problem.
Yeah, but I also have a question because it looks like the book is both about this man you're trying to make a portrait of, and it's about the situation of the illegal immigrants in the Netherlands. And is it true that it's what of the two is most important, to make a portrait of this man or?
Well, yeah, the beginning of the book was I wanted to tell a story about undocumented people, but then when I was doing this project, I found out like I cannot tell the whole story by one book. So I just like to focus on one person to get it like really personal, and I thought, okay, through him, through his life, I thought I could better tell this story because he is telling the story. But of course, it's completely different. I could have picked somebody else and asked him or her, can I take pictures of you? Can I tell your story? And then you would have a complete different story. Like Sarah is saying, she in the next book, she is against migration when you have children back home. And like Jean will definitely also tell a different story than somebody who is like 20 years old, who came alone to the Netherlands. And
yes, but so in a way we are following you. You are in a way the one who is asking questions, getting new insights, taking new perspectives, and so with you the perspectives change, the topics change a bit, the themes change a bit.
Yeah, it's now changing even more. Yeah.
Yeah.
But initially, my idea was, of course, to let Jean tell the story. But that was also, and I think that's also an important part of documentary. You cannot like start, I'm going to make this, because things are changing when you are there.
Yeah, but you could also think, and I like it that you didn't, oh, it's a failure, I should start all over again. Oh, again, it's a failure,
No,
I should start all over again. So you accept your kind of failures because they are in a way the interesting parts of the story, and then you just
and that's because in the beginning I was really frustrated. Yes, it was like a frustrating thing. yeah, and then I thought, okay, well, we can stop and we can say, okay, we fail, or we can just tell everybody that we fail, and then by telling that we are failing, there's another layer there. Yeah, sorry.
So it's what I said in the beginning in my introduction, that you accept the position of not knowing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Actually,
And take responsibility for the story. At the same, those two sides, I think, are, and in a way, so to use one of your much often used words, Jean is indexical for this larger group of undocumented people, and then at the same time he cannot be.
Yes, yeah.
It's the a sort of a friction that is there, and that is, I guess, hard to escape in a lot of documentary work, and that touches on Iria's question. So he stands for people, but he doesn't, and he can't, but he does, because this is an opportunity for us to at least access a problem that usually we don't get to see, except in spectacularized images.
Yeah. No, and that's really nice, because with the second book, like, we spoke to many more people, and we also interviewed like Jean's successful brother, and he's like, he has a taxi business, and he is really successful, and he has a lot of money, and that's quite interesting also, because then you have the story about somebody else in Jean's family who is doing something else. But even then, yeah, we also could have met somebody who was, we also met like people who were living at the border of the city, and they were in a much worse situation than Jean. And actually I also shot, I took photographs there, and those are like really, when I was taking the pictures, I thought, okay, these are the really cliche pictures of people who are living in the desert under a tree. But and there was a woman with two siblings, and I said, oh, I'm not going to take picture of her, because I knew, like, I saw so many pictures from people who are hungry. But then she kept on asking, oh no, please take a picture, and she's laughing on the picture. I said, okay, it's like more like I took the picture for her, and I think we will also put this photograph as like some kind of an extreme cliche kind of photograph also in the book. But I could easily have make a complete book with only pictures of the people who were living in these really harsh conditions. And then you also have like some kind of a story. So
Okay, I see 3 more questions, and I think then we move to a small break. Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your offering. I'm of a generation from Britain who went through an awful lot of social changes. And as you were recalling the process of your documentation, I recall the likes of Jeremy Sanford's book, and later made into a television program called Cathy Come Home. This made tremendous social changes within Britain, and the whole process of setting up an organization which was called Shelter, and is called Shelter, for homeless people in Britain. I remember speaking to Donald McCullum and his photographs of the down and outs of East London. I'm trying to recall situations and events and photographers or writers of books who went on to make changes. And these were people who were well known. Jeremy Sanford was a very well-known writer. Don McCullum was a very well-known photographer. They each used different techniques and processes to bring about social changes and economic changes, big changes. Questions were asked in government. I just wonder, are you trying to do too much in too short a time, i.e. concentrate on the photography or on the writing? I'm thinking of Tony Parker, who again interviewed prostitutes, homeless people, people in prison, lighthouse keepers, curious combination of people. But he allowed them to talk into the tape recorder and then edited or rewrote in a slight way to bring it into book form. And these made changes as well. These sewed books, these sewed pictures. I hope I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to equate Mike Leigh's Naked, another film, Ken Loach's films, which I think are very popular in the Netherlands. They really have an impact. An awful lot more money goes into their process. I quite agree with you, but somehow there's a starting point there, maybe, of past history. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I totally agree with you. It's too much for me to cope with because I don't know too much about, like, for instance, Nigerian society. So we, and actually with Annette Kouwenhoven, she is the designer, but she's also, what I said, she's working a lot with people. We will see, and for the book we definitely want to ask other people to join the project, because I cannot tell this whole story by myself, and I don't have the idea that I'm will be able to change, to bring on this big change. It's just like with all the things we have, and we can put into to a book. We're trying to do our best, but I totally agree with you. I suppose if I understand you correctly, that it's good, like, to have also other people to cooperate, for instance, to give this more body in a way, and to.
Well, but you do have the ambition to change things.
I want to tell this story, and especially with the first book, and of course then the second book is part of that. Yes, I would like to at least be able to change the opinion of people here in the Netherlands. And the first book was, as I said, is like an accusation, and I don't think we changed much to it. But I can imagine if you put like different bodies of work together, or make like a bigger exposition, or to that in a way that it can help. And
so do you think that maybe is slightly under ambitious to think, okay, let's change the opinion of people, but let's get government to ask questions? Should that be our aim?
Well, again, I can only refer to these past
of course, yeah.
personal events, and I remember speaking to Donald McCullum, who obviously, probably he is known to people here, who was not only concerned with the down and outs of East London, but concerned about war. He was one of the recognized war photographers of Britain, and I think he really fought for change. But then I would like to talk about the whole use of the camera. A camera has a viewpoint, but it also has a point of view. And I remember speaking to David Gepp, who purposely works with pinhole cameras, ridiculous in this sort of situation. But I would like to bring across this point. And David Gepp, increasingly makes it. He says that the photographic paper breathes the same air as the subject. Now, when you think about it, there is only a lens or some sort of electronics between the photographic plate or the paper or the digital computerized whatever and the subject. But to breathe the same air means that also the photographer breathes the same air as the subject. And as we spoke in our introduction, or was spoken, we are looking at something which is recording a past event, but we sit here in a totally different situation. We breathe a totally different air than the subject breathed or in the past. It's a past history. But until we breathe the same air as the subject, until the photographer does, how can we create an image? It's a question, I don't know, a comment.
Yeah, that's a long question, and an interesting one.
I take the Eurolines bus purposely to come to the Netherlands from London, right? We go through the searches. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 times that the customs stop us. I am sniffed by dogs because I'm carrying money. The dogs can tell that that I'm carrying coins. I speak to people sometimes who sit in the next seat to me. I never see them again. I experience that. I'm breathing the same air as the person who is refused entry into London or comes from London and refused entry here. Regularly, by the way, the bus travels into the Netherlands and then is stopped at the first petrol station. We all have to check all our passports are checked. You really get a sense that you're crossing borders and boundaries, and you might not meet up with the person who was sitting next to you. That is the reality, I think. Mm-hmm. I hope it makes sense.
Yes, no, it does make sense, and I think I agree with you. But yeah.
There's levels of responsibility in experiencing, in sharing experiences. Well, that's on the human level, but then on the media level, I think that might be an interesting topic actually for a future Pricca practice that I'll store. But the way mass media, if it even still exists, you can question that, or whether making a book is still mass media, which it was in the time that Don McCullin made some of his books.
It isn't anymore. Like
no, so
we printed like 500
these
books only. Yeah, so yeah.
But it's an interesting topic on many levels that I think comes from this distance here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to you.
Yes, yes.
So you have been breathing the same air.
Actually, I breathed this very hot air. It was a bit too much for me, but it's no, that's true. But no, but you were referring to Don McCullin, and he was like also publishing his photographs in the Sunday Times magazine at the big. I called like the newspapers. Like, would you like to print on this book? And they are just not interested. The Germans were interested. That was funny. Like, no, in me. In Don McCullin, they are. I don't know. I don't think so. Well, that's because you was like social changes when he took these photographs from the down and outs in London. It was in the 60s, I think, or the 70s. So I wasn't born then. So I can't tell. But I'm quite pessimistic about not Don McCullin in particular, because I like him as a photographer. He's actually one of my favorite photographers. But I don't know if photojournalists at this moment are really changing a lot. Well,
well, I think. Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
I think you gave the answer actually, because the whole some time ago, because too much of it is repeating what we know, is filling in what we already know, and not opening up. And there's.
And I'm not against it. I'm not against photojournalism. That's you shouldn't read me like this, because I love like good reportage. But I don't think it should be necessarily done by, for instance, Dutch or foreign photographers. I don't need to go to Gaza to depict the war between Israel and the Palestinians. I think Palestinian and Israeli people might be able to do this as well.
And there's actually really a lot happening in that field. Wait. We really have to go to a break soon. We
can talk about it later, maybe.
Yeah. So is it a very short question to wind this up? Then we can. Okay. But wait. Then I'm coming to you with the microphone. All this anarchy here.
Are the newspapers not necessary anymore then?
Yes, I think they are necessary. Yeah, but well, that's a nice. I think in some years we will live, of course, without the printed newspaper. I think, but then, yeah, no, I don't think we can live without them. We need them. Yeah, so that's a
But that's again that is this other Pricca practice meeting.
I would like to talk later, maybe.
Yeah. And again, this is a very interesting topic. and the position of photography within this is a really interesting topic that we shall get back to. And now I get back to Angelique.
Well, first I would like to react to this man, because I don't think that it is only important to tell a story when you can reach many people. I think it's very good that everybody who would like to think about these topics and talk about it is as important as the one who is reaching these big audiences. I'm very curious now about your books, how the relation is between the pictures and the writing, because of what you were telling that this whole time now is very interesting, and you make a very sincere impression on me. I was wondering if this same impression would come to me through the book, because of the difficulty of the images, because I'm used, and like everybody else, to so many images, so many impressions about this, that I like your story so much. So I was wondering if is it necessary to even show images in this book?
Of course. No, no. But that's also because I like photographs, and I think it's really, if you see, like, for instance, the documents and the children's handwriting, the pictures in which they are changing, it tells a lot. You cannot tell that only in words. And the book is like, they are only the words of Jean in the first book. The second book will be completely different. There might be more text actually in the second book than in the first book. Depends if there will be a second book. We are searching for like fundings, etc. But it's not a story. Yeah, no, I think the pictures for this particular story, since because it's this personal, you need the pictures, and they are also like, in a way, they are edited in a way. It's like a puzzle. It takes a lot of time to fully get hold of this story, because the pictures are. It's not just a pile of pictures which are there. They are interconnected, and they tell a lot of things which aren't in the written text.
There is a copy of the book here. So during the break, for those who've already seen the exhibition there or part of the break, you can take a look at it and again continue the conversation.
Did you also publish the book in Nigeria?
It is in Niger. Well, Jean, Jean took. So he sent some books to Niger, but no, it's in a way, it's especially the first book. Yeah, but that's a different kind of thing. Like it has to do a lot with distribution and all these kind of things. Like this is like a really low-profile book, and Jean took some books with him to Niger, and he gave them to the people. No, but we didn't do that. We might do this with a follow-up, because it's still like it's a really small project, the first book, and
book distribution in any part of Africa except maybe South Africa is really challenging. I can, from personal experience. Yeah. The very, very last question, and then we go to a break for Ria.
Yeah, thank you. I'm enjoying this discussion. And I wanted to just ask another question about the book, the one about the title.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that you saved the Elma Suave?
Yeah.
Suave?
Yeah.
Do you feel like at the end it's you being saved, you know, something about you being saved? Or do you feel like you save these people, you know? Do you save each other?
Well,
and then the other part, is the part about social change. You know, when the picture, when he's sending you texts to give him money, and also the pictures where he's asking for a picture where he didn't tell you that he wanted to marry, I think, a white woman, so he can get a status here. And those also contrived maybe manipulations, you know, when you give, because it's a part of the story, and he is part of the story. So the money thing, does it sort of somewhere along the way, you know, affect the story in a way that it shouldn't? Does it I don't know if my question makes any sense.
Yes, no, I do understand, and I think that's a really relevant question, because the money issue became really big, and because with the first book we were splitting like all the revenues, but that's a thing I knew. Like people were asking us money, and it's just a big part of this. Jean came to Europe to earn money to support his children, and of course, when we were there in Niger, some people asked us for money, and we also want to put in the book, but that is a little bit difficult, because I definitely don't want to put them to portray the family as like people who only want money and only want to cooperate for money. But it's, of course, it's also discussions I had with Annette, like how far are we willing to give the family money? And at a certain point, we actually felt a bit like they were using us, and we might be wrong. But I also want to put like all these kind of conversations we had, like, are we wrong about the way we are seeing Jean and his family? Is this okay? That's also an interesting part of the story, in my opinion. And the title is like a bit of ironical, because if you read the title and you see "He Saved Me," you would expect that his wife is telling like Jean is saving her. He saved her he supported her. But then she was talking about me, and for me that felt like really bad. And she at that point she was like really negative about Jean. She was like blaming him for not giving this money, and so the title is also a little bit about this uncomfortable situation we were in, like so again also this title, and I suppose the next book will be like much more like a puzzle, and there are actually also pieces missing, so it's not a complete story. It's still not finished. So it's, yeah, I hope I answered your question a bit.
I think so, and I think that with it's still not finished, we also have a really good ending of this first part of our afternoon, which can be continued informally now during the break. So again, the invitation, well, to continue informally with Ben, but also to view the Go Forward exhibition if you didn't already, because that will be our topic after the break, where first Britt and Sarah will present their experiences really in this exchange. Iria will contribute, and then I will contribute, and then we have another discussion round, I hope. And what I didn't say before is that at 5, or just before 5, when we end here, you're most welcome to join us at the Noorderlicht Gallery, where a book will be launched, and it's my book, so that's nice, I guess. There is coffee and tea also behind. Feel free, help yourself, and see you in about 20 minutes. Let's start again, 3 o'clock.
Moest je wel alles weten, overal een mening over hebben.
Het is altijd iets comfortabeler om
zo ontzettend aanvaardt. Dat je gewoon, en dat je natuurlijk, wat ik ook wel heel intrigerend vind, dat uiteindelijk lijkt een beetje hoe Andrea werkt. Ik snap wel dat ze jou, ik ben heel blij dat ze jou respecteert, zeg maar.
Ik vond dat een beetje overkwam dat heel passen in de bril.
Enorm. Ja. Maar dat, je neemt ook gewoon, je neemt voortdurend alles wat gebeurt serieus. Je gaat niet het verhaal in je hoofd, maar iedere keer dus zeg maar, er komt iemand tegen en die man wil dat wel en dan neem je dat serieus. Dus wat in de werkelijkheid op je afkomt, neem je iedere keer neem je mee en neem je volkomen serieus. Je gaat niet met je verhaal.
Nee,
dat vind ik echt heel
en dat was vooral bij misschien op het nog een keer gaan, maar dat was natuurlijk ook bij die reis naar Niger, uitgangspunt, dat we eigenlijk totaal niet iets wat we zouden aantrekken. Ja. En hoe bereidwillig ze zouden zijn. En inderdaad, dat op een gegeven moment merkte dat de familie, ja, dat ze er wel genoeg van hadden, zeg maar. Dan moet je nog, ja, dat is nog de enige die ik had. Dan moet je nog mee door.
Moet je nou letten?
Ja, moet je eraf? Ja, nee, zeker, ja, natuurlijk.
Het is gewoon met dat stekkertje en dan maak je automatisch verbinding op.
Ja, het gaat automatisch.
Oké.
Als het goed is. Dus we moeten even kijken. Het is ook die kabel die is van hier hoor, dus de stroomkabel die daar ligt. Ja, dat zijn mijn foto's. Die moet je dan open sturen. En dan krijg je mijn voor ingenomen.
Oh, dit met een foto doen. Dit met een foto doen.
Ja,
ja, dat begrijp ik, maar dan nog. Nog helemaal niet netjes. Het is gewoon een goede kast. Het is gewoon ik wil nergens behagen. Ja, en echt heel fijn dat je hier bent.
Ja, moet je goed opmaken. Ja, dat is het idee is inderdaad.
Nee, maar fotograferen je anders gesteld zodat je het niet doet.
Heb je hem nu niet?
In zijn leven luistert hij wel, zeg maar.
Kijk, ik hoef gewoon maar dichterbij te
Ja,
komen.
dat was ook dan, ja, dan moet je ook weer eigenlijk over die tons heen. Dat je met veel moeite maakt die foto. Ze zijn eigenlijk niet zichtbaar.
Moeilijk, want het is ook best wel agressief.
Ja, het is heel agressief hier. Maar goed, ja, dat is ook deel van de kijk, waar we het er net over hadden, dat je op een gegeven moment daar bent. En we zitten nu heel erg met van hoe gaan we nou dat verhaal vertellen zonder dat Sean negatief belicht wordt. Snap je? Dus ik kan me voorstellen, hoe gaan we bijvoorbeeld het verhaal over geld in het boek opnemen? Zonder dat zij meteen geldwolven zijn. Dat zijn ze ook helemaal niet. Maar het is een hartstikke logische reden dat ze van ons verwachten van joh, kunnen jullie nog wat voor ons betalen of niet?
Do you get it now?
Ja, en dat gaat. Ja.
Do you get it now?
Die best moet om zeg maar die achterliggende gedachten daaruit zich dan een soort van nadeel bij een beetje uit. Maar hoe we dat in het volgende boek doen, ja, inderdaad, de effectiviteit van het boek, ja, het zal minder effectief zijn dan heel gelicht iets. Of als jij boek publiceert of je maakt iets wat er heel catchy uitziet, daar heb je natuurlijk wellicht sneller de aandacht mee dan met zo'n
Could I ask you to take your seats again? And it might not be so bad if some people just take the front row seat. You know, we have this intimate group of people. And I would like to invite Britt van Sloen and Sarah Ijangolet to come, and what they will present is, I asked them to, while Britt was in Uganda, to think of a presentation that would address something that seemed to be very obvious, or something they walked into as these people from two different countries with their different experiences, but both art students, to address and present to you. And that's what they are going to do, and we can already see what the theme has become, which theme came to the surface. So again, if you have questions, please hold them, write them down or something, because we will now do 3 more brief presentations after each other, and then we'll do the discussion with all 3 presentations in mind. Okay.
Nudity in art. Before I went to Uganda, I was kind of afraid for what was going to happen to me, because I heard these very bad stories on the news about bills which have been passed and other things. So we first want to show you some small videos about nudity in general in Uganda.
To Uganda now, hundreds of women have been protesting in Kampala against a new law that bans miniskirts. The government says the law is designed to stop indecent dressing, but critics say it violates basic rights and endangers women. CCTV's Michael Balake has more.
There are few words on the posters, but they speak volumes. Women here are demanding that the government recalls the anti-pornography law. They say it is putting women at risk.
Anybody on the streets who sees a woman who is indecently dressed according to them will take the law into their hands. It's going to be a country of lawlessness. It's going to be a country of mass abuse of women, and that is something we are against today.
The Anti-Pornography Act was passed last week. It bans women from revealing their thighs, breasts, buttocks, and from dressing indecently in a manner to sexually excite. Uganda is a socially conservative country. Authorities here say there has been a significant increase in pornography. But activists say the anti-pornography law will escalate violence against women. Activists say it is already on the rise.
If you want to know how that is an epidemic, contrast it with the HIV scourge in Uganda. HIV scourge is at about 6-7%. It's an epidemic. But now all those forms of violence are above 30%. Domestic violence is 59%. Sexual violence over 30%. And what is so sad is all these acts of violence against women are normalized as the norm.
There have already been reports in recent days of women in short skirts being publicly harassed and assaulted. Michael Balake, CCTV Kampala, Uganda.
This is the image Desire Luzinda would like the world to have of her, a talented, beautiful and successful musician. But recently Ugandans have seen something far different, graphic pictures of her naked body. Desire spoke to the BBC and told us that she has been in hiding, scared of how the public might react.
Basing on the words, the posts online, and what I've been hearing on from media houses, some are very compassionate, but you cannot base on that. Definitely some will be very heartless, very judgmental, very, very, very disappointed. I'm hoping I can face it.
Why would you put yourself in this position?
Exactly.
When somebody, you never know, somebody could turn around and change their mind.
Yeah. I wish I had an answer for that, but just like I said, I was in love. I've never taken nude pictures. When my mother called me, she was like, honestly, were you drugged? Were you drunk? Because this is not you. I didn't even have an answer.
But the worst might not be over for Desire. Uganda's Minister for Ethics and Integrity, Father Simon Lokodo, says he wants her arrested. This comes after stricter anti-pornography legislation was passed last year. He is already facing criticism for blaming the victim.
When investigation starts, it must go and cover all avenues, possible areas where the act could have originated from. Now, the first and obvious person we've landed on is Desire. Desire's images and pictures are there. The next person we're moving to is her boyfriend.
But it's not just celebrities having their nude pictures leaked. Some Ugandans, mainly women, have had their pictures published in newspapers or shared widely on social media. But it's hard to get them to speak about their experiences. Tina Musuya is a women's activist. She says so-called revenge porn is a growing trend in Uganda, and women need to be careful about who they share their private images with.
We need to be very cautious about taking pictures, because with technology, it is very easy to lock and very easy to unlock, because anyone who you're smiling with today might be that bad person who will leak these pictures. But then, if we took those pictures and they leaked to the media, there's a law to protect us.
Desire says she's looking at taking legal action over the leaked pictures and is not worried about threats to arrest her. She says she's determined to come out stronger from this ordeal. Catherine Byarahanga, BBC News, Kampala.
Yeah, so nudity seems to be a very big topic in Uganda, and yeah, we already knew that because of the news. And now we have a small story about what really happened in Uganda, and that introduces us to nudity in art in Uganda. And Sarah will read this.
This particular story is written as an experience that someone had at level 3 in secondary school, and quoted, "Restriction on expression through art came out clear when we were at level 3 of secondary school education. This was when Joel, one of his completed work on the chalkboard in the classroom, where other students were busy reading or doing homework in the evening. The display set the classroom on fire. There was a lot of noise produced by students who shouted in excitement or laughed in amusement. The noise attracted prefects, the master on duty, and the deputy headmaster, who rushed to the scene and removed the painting, calm source of noise and disturbance when we looked on helplessly. The next day, Joel was expelled from school. He took his guitar with him, but art and its other followers remained in the school, but in a disturbed state." This young man drew a picture of a nude, naked woman on the chalkboard in his class, and as you can already see the reaction that the class itself had to his drawing, and then the reaction that the school administration had to him making such a drawing in his classroom. So I'm going to pass this on to Britt to make her observations on her experience in Uganda and at the university I go to.
Yeah, I attended a sculpture class a few weeks ago, and the sculpture class was about making a monument for UCU, that's the university. And one student wanted to make a sculpture of a pregnant woman who was giving birth, and everyone was reacting a bit ashamed, I guess. And the teacher asked me what I thought about it and if I could help him with this project. And I said, what about if you ask your mother and ask her about giving birth? And everyone looked at me and said, no, this is Africa. And they started laughing at me, and I was like, okay, wow. Yeah, I didn't really expect that, because here in the Netherlands most people are quite open in this subject and talking about it. And we, for example, have biology lessons and talk about it with our students and also with our parents, because it's nature, and for me this was very, very weird to hear. So after that we continue talking about, I think, nudity in general, and yeah, everyone said to me, this is Africa, you can't talk about nudity. And so Sarah and I chose the subject nudity in art, because we are art students, and we asked some students to talk with us and about nudity in general and in art, and we made a video of it. We show it in a few minutes about nudity in art in general. So yeah, and for me nudity is, or art is something which you express your feelings in and your ideas. So if you want to show nudity, then yeah, it's just expressing your feelings. And I couldn't understand that these students couldn't express all their feelings and all their ideas. So yeah, that was very interesting, I guess.
The following is basically my understanding of nudity as an art form and as a student in Africa. I read something by Kenneth Clark in his book The Nude, A Study in Ideal Form. The English language, with its elaborate generosity, distinguishes between the naked and the nude. To be naked is to be deprived of our clothes, and the word implies some of the embarrassment most of us feel in that condition. The word nude, on the other hand, carries, in educated usage, no uncomfortable overtone. The vague image it projects into the mind is not of a huddled and defenseless body, but of a balanced, prosperous, and confident body, the body reformed. Studying in Uganda, to be honest, when you bring up a conversation as an artist of, hey, we draw in class, why not have like a nude study of the anatomy? It's something that people laugh like, ha ha ha, nudity, really? Why would we do that, you know? In most cases, I have a few friends who do not study fine art who tend to ask me, oh, you're doing art, right? Did you draw someone naked yet? And I have to go, no. It's in Africa, after the research that I've done, I have made a few conclusions of my own that I feel could explain why nudity is such an uncomfortable subject in the African society and in Uganda in particular. The nude form is rejected because nakedness in Africa is connected with sex. African society writes nudity off as automatically sexually provocative. And therefore the observation of such as immoral. With a mindset like this, it is common for an African to be uncomfortable viewing artwork containing any form of nudity at all, even more so if confronted with a nude model. It is unfortunate, in my view, it's unfortunate that a morality that is defined as, I use quotes, African, keeping in mind that the history that we come from had a lot of human beings walking around half-clothed, I find that it is something that cannot logically be used as an excuse to condemn the presence of nudity in fine art. On Tuesday morning, I attended the first drawing class in which I drew a nude person. To be honest, it was far less awkward than most of my peers back home would think that it would be. I found that the person that was sitting in front of me posing to be drawn wasn't just a naked man, because a lot of other factors were put into play. We had the setting, his gesture, the mood, and inevitably I was actually sitting there quite comfortably drawing this guy. Before I knew it, I was through with my drawing, and I was actually quite pleased with that. I didn't bring it though, I'm sorry. But I feel like nudity in African art is something that should be more explored, because nudity is a form of expression. For a lot of artists, it shows a lot more, because nudity is kind of like showing, for me it shows a lot of innocence and kind of honesty. However, in the African society, it's more of shameful and something that you should hide and keep to yourself. Yeah, I think me being in the university that I'm in a university called Uganda Christian University. It is a very religious university. Me going there, I figured that we just didn't draw nudes because I'm in Uganda Christian University. However, I have found out that in a lot of universities in Uganda, they don't actually explore the nude in their art classes. And I feel like this kind of, I feel like this holds a lot of us back. I feel like the amount of drawing practice that I have is incomplete because I have not been able to make a detailed study of a nude in anatomy. And yeah, that's it. I would like to share with you an interview that we did with some of my peers in my class at UCU, and they shared their views about the subject.
And unfortunately, there was one student. There was one student who was, for me, he seems to be very conservative, and we asked him at first if he wanted to join the interview, but in the end he didn't show up. I don't know why, but yeah, most people you see in the interview are quite liberal in it, except for one guy, but yeah, you will see what he's saying.
But I don't think introducing nudity at the end.
Is it possible to increase your volume?
But it's subtitled, so I think
that's true.
On stage like that would be so good. First of all, that's underage.
See, morality.
No, it's not just.
What we're trying
it's
to
not
fight.
underage. Just guys, yes, it's art, but it's not underage. Just only in Uganda. If you see as a person in Form 3, that's how old. That's
I was saying maybe.
You say
I'm not
maybe
saying
Form 3.
you should.
Okay, now that's
bring
what
it
I'm
in.
saying. If you can bring in nudity, maybe let me say. If you have to bring it in, maybe let's start HSC. But O-level it would be complicated. Reason being, you have to also consider the fact that those people now, that's now the peak of adolescence. It will be so hard for those people to control. But if you have to just make it publicly acceptable, it will be worse. It will be now be much. The effect would be much worse than what you are saying.
Let us put this concept in the point of Karamoja. Imagine if they did that in Karamoja. Don't you think it would work? Because they're already used to it.
In Karamoja it would work.
Yeah, that is why I'm saying that Ugandans should change their mindset. If they keep having it in their mind that, oh my God, it's a naked person, I can't control myself. The mindset is what we should learn to control as artists, as people who are looking to the future. If we're going to keep having this thing of, if I see a naked person, I'm not comfortable with that. How far are you going to go?
It's like they think, you can say, the body is someone's,
It's the
like
temple
a temple
of
of
the Holy
God, so
Spirit.
it should be private, not for public use in whatever way. Whether you are drawing it, whether you are just showing it off, whether it's just for the purpose of art, you just think it's not something which should be for the public and for anyone else.
It's only us to choose what is right and what is wrong. And I think human beings should learn to understand that if we put our mind to something, that we know is going to be beautiful, then we should put our mind there. We shouldn't be so conservative.
But if you start thinking the other way around, then that's what's going to be bad.
But you're not supposed to be thinking.
That's what. No, you're supposed to be thinking. Of course, you're supposed to be thinking about what you're drawing and how to bring it out.
You're not supposed to. You're supposed to. It's like reading a novel. It's
Oh,
like
guys,
it's like what my mother said.
I'm not saying that you're thinking about. I'm saying we are thinking art, not thinking about the body itself. You're thinking about the anatomy. That's what I'm saying. You should, when you're drawing, you should be thinking about the anatomy and what you're seeing in front of you, but not specifically thinking about who is that person. As in maybe that person has small boobs. That person has.
That should be a medium of expression of either inner feelings or what the artist perceives in the society, or should be that kind of reflection. Can an artist be a reflection of the society from which he or she comes from? You know, do you get your inspiration from around, or do you just paint mere pictures for the sake of painting?
Yeah, this is Ian. He's an artist, and he works a lot with nudity in his art, and you can see his work over there. And yeah, it was a big contrast for me to see this because he's really liberal in it, and that was interesting. So we wanted to show that as well. Yeah, that was it.
Okay, thank you. We'll probably come back to this after the other two presentations. Thank you. We are switching computers again.
Yeah, I'm going to try to bend. Maybe I should use the other mic. Yeah, I'm called Iria Nsubuga. And oh, I'm missing. Okay, and I'm an artist. I'm a social artist.
Iria, can you operate it yourself? Just forward, like that. Yeah?
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a visual artist. I'm also a social artist, and I recently realized from interaction with Anke and Andrea that I'm also an artist that looks a lot at images, at photographs as a reference. I look a lot at newspapers. I look a lot at what's happening in the media as also a source of recording my own experience. And my theme sort of was transient, moving around from image as a tool for better communication and interaction, or bridging gaps, but bridging differences. I since discovered that it was actually bridging distances and not bridging differences. So that was a little bit of a confusion for me, and so I'm just going to try to read, and if I sense that you're getting bored, then I'll just sort of stop and try to, a few pages, yeah. So like I was saying, I refer to photography. I refer a lot to photography, and this painting is called The Newspaper Readers, and the superscript in there, from the scriptures, from the Bible, and Hebrews. I don't know what it's in. I think that's Dutch, is it? Hebrews 12:1, a cloud of witnesses. So I refer to photography, and especially photo journalism, and I'm interested in viewing the other side of the photo story. Painting and the photo essentially, for me, discuss the same things, only that they look at them from different points of view. Now, I was just looking at a lot of things when Andrea asked me to speak. It was a good challenge for me. And I was thinking about a lot of these words. You're free to pick up a few, or to catch me later, to ask me questions in case I miss out some of those things. The image the image as a noun, the image as a verb, image as downloads from a higher being, level of being, image as uploads into higher realms of consciousness, self-image, image as a mental idea, imagery, illusions of reality, or illusions of realities, the figure or figment, figurativity, picture, idea, ideation, product, object, object as a noun, and object as a verb, thing, body, mind, consciousness, subconscious, unconscious, mindset, soul, spirit, energy, force, ethos, icon, iconology, iconography, portrait, culture, context, visual culture, understanding of image, object, mindset, context, culture, the West's attempt, or West's view of Africa's image, the image in popular culture, the image as propaganda, image as stories, and then the last one, bridging differences. However, it has now changed to bridging distances. I was looking up the use of this word image and picture from the time that we've been here. I've been finding a lot of overlap between the picture and an image. Sometimes the image is a picture and the picture is an image. So I'm going to try to discuss a few of these things, not everything, in the short time that I have. So this is how I'm starting this unstructured presentation, really. You may hear my conclusion at the beginning or in the middle or my background at the end. So still some issues that are still relevant for us all. I'm still aiming at asking more questions than answers on this. Okay, so I'm going to try to read it. I've been told to read slowly. I'm just going to gauge from your reaction. I see some yawning or some uncomfortable squeaky bum time, then I know it's good to move. Okay, there are no bad people. This is where I'm starting. There are no bad people such as those who spend their days on earth trying to make life impossible for other people. Even though people are not bad, systems made by people can really be bad and oppressive of others and even themselves. Usually you can tell a good or bad cultural system by how it deals with the differences between the population from the most disadvantaged to the most privileged. Also, one can tell an overtly flawed system by how easily it allows for polarization on issues, creating a them versus us, or how meaningful discussion becomes difficult or impossible. This conflict creates a sense of fear and hatred amongst populations. Many people become sick because of this fear, and the constant treatment of symptoms literally kills them, while the core issues of hate, unforgiveness, and fear are not addressed. For us here to walk away from any prejudice, hatred, fear, or unforgiveness, it will mean to attain an inner spiritual healing, and this healing produces an atmosphere of community and social acceptance. We have taken too much time looking at others. We have taken too much time looking at how others look at us, and now I'm speaking from the point of view as Africans. But we may be in danger of ignoring how we look, how we ourselves look at others, or indeed how we look at ourselves. It is very difficult to do any introspective work because it is much easier to blame others for our problems and exempt ourselves from any responsibility for our status quo. All work that discusses history is also an introspective work because it asks us to look at ourselves and how we deal with others today because or in spite of the past. How we understand the past in terms of perspectives, contexts, and attitudes affects how we deal with the present and essentially affects the future beyond our own individual lifespans. The Ham Mukasa project work, started by Andrea Stiltins, looking at the writings of Hamukasa in the book Simud Dan Nyuma was an invitation for me to engage history not only of Buganda but that of Uganda, and to get an opportunity to deal with the mix of Christianity, Islam, and then the all-powerful tribal kings. And we also have the opportunity to deal with their brutality. It is possible that the powerful, unquestioned kings have given way to a similar political class in Africa. This project allowed us the freedom to look at others, but also look at ourselves. We as Africans are critical of colonialism, but still fail to see the evils in our own leadership models of the past. I, for one, am glad that I was not born under the reign of Kabaka Mwanga or Mutesa I, where speaking objectively concerning anything concerning the king or his rule was blasphemy and merited instant slaughter. The idea of the God King is still present even today, but thankfully only in vestigial form. Obviously, this is now, like I was saying, we don't know whether it's a conclusion or introduction. I'm just trying to speak something here. Obviously, not everything about Africa is good. I have many criticisms for my country, in particular, for our faults, particularly with the political class. Even though I criticize Africa, I know in my heart of hearts that at the core of it all, Africa is a uniquely pure entity. Africa is beautiful, and it has been a privilege from God for making me African. There are sayings today that this century has been called the century of Africa because we are re-emerging to take our place, to take our right place on the global scene. Now, if I go back a little bit to what I was looking at, these words, these many words, images as illusions. On the other hand, the rosy image that is projected about the West in the eyes of the Africans is not only rather inaccurate, it also creates a fairy tale situation in the minds of the Africans, many of whom would do anything just to get the opportunity to live in Europe or America. We all know that money does not grow on trees in Europe, and that the streets are not made of gold. It is not true that little girls in Europe are made of sugar and honey and all things good, and that when they fart, they exude a wonderful lavender perfume in the air. Nothing comes free in Europe, and not everybody there is living in palaces and hiring 15 servants. So the many thousands who do make it to Europe as illegal immigrants end up as disillusioned, stateless economic migrants without a proper status in Europe or their homelands. Okay, skipping to the next page here where I was looking at definitions of image and word. I'm going to skip that and picture. I'm just say the dictionary definitions of both image and picture overlap into each other, sometimes meaning the same thing, while at other times meaning different things. I picked up one particular word in I think it's Old English, which talks about image and picture as you know, it describes one with the other. Okay, so why do we need to bridge differences across cultures and spaces? These are questions. The first, increasing diversity of populations is making it more incumbent to understand each other better in order to promote better communication and reduce conflicts across cultures or groups. And this is in the present tense, but more importantly, in the future. What then is the place of the image in promoting a better understanding of others in order to communicate effectively? How do we confront the social imbalances with these images? This also sort of goes back to the work of Ben, where he's talking about a lot of these things of the social imbalance and immigration. The image usually represents a part of a wider message. It may represent the whole message itself as well. The image is often history's memory. The spiritual position of the image has given it a place in all tenses. In a sense, the image is eternal. Its position in consciousness cannot be overridden by any other drive. That is why it is necessary for the human being to create. The creative drive to make images is a complex process of downloads into the visible world from the unseen worlds. Unseen does not mean the same thing as absent. And again, that goes back to what the gentleman at the back was talking about, breathing the same air. It might be quite impossible to breathe the same air as Rudyard Kipling, for instance. I'm going to talk about that also from a different point. Absence refers to the vacant or non-existence, or an entity that has not been made in the first place, in the physical. Images, even with the ones that are still fixed in the brain, the brain's hard drives are eternal. Even if one hard drive dies or malfunctions, the ideas still are retrievable through other people in the future. The ideas are fixed pieces of the universe's complex knowledge base that ensures constant change in the natural realm. In the spiritual realm, past, present, and the future are all mashed up into one form of structure. The spiritual is not limited by context or time as a physical existence. Because the image is a reference point for an experience or circumstance, we usually have to go back to it as a gateway into the past, which has passed on and become physically inaccessible. Okay, some of this stuff is not making any sense to me anymore. All right, okay. What's the image of Africa in history? What's the image of Africa in history? Different views are now in perpetual session. And I'm sure that Ben and the rest of, and Andrea and Anka would recognize maybe the people who made these pictures, because it's some image I picked up from photojournalism, from the internet. The image, okay, the different views are now in perpetual session over what vision of the past Africa should embrace. On one hand, Mazrui talks about romantic primitivism, where we embrace our primal character, highly in tune with nature and seeking to live in its shadow. And on the other hand, we have romantic Gloriana, which recalls the glorious past of Egypt, Meroe, Zimbabwe, Timbuktu, Ghana, Gao, and many others. So we should make no mistake, based on these, particularly the romantic Gloriana, that Africa has a rich history and has given the ancient world a lot of what the modern world embraces as theirs. Now Africa has to relearn many things that were hers in the first place, because they were lost somewhere in the sands of time and space. A similar scenario now exists where Europe has to relearn the spiritual values that she lost in the 20th and 21st century. This single story, I'm now quoting a writer, Adichie Ngozi Chimamanda. In the 30 years, she wrote The Danger of a Single Story, October 2009. And she says that this single story of Africa ultimately comes from Western literature. Now, here is a quote from the writing of a London merchant called John Locke, who sailed in Africa in 1561 and kept a fascinating account of his voyage. After referring to the black Africans as beasts who have no houses, he writes, "They are also people without heads, having their mouth and eyes in their breasts." I guess we're seeing a lot of mouths and hand, behind there on the lady. Now, I've laughed every time I've read this, and one must admire the imagination of John Locke. But what is important about his writing is that it represents the beginning of a tradition of telling African stories in the West, a tradition of sub-Saharan Africa as a place of negatives, of difference, of darkness, of people who, in the words of the wonderful poet Rudyard Kipling, are half devil and half child. These are not my words, the words from the lady I just quoted. Okay, from this point, I'm just going to talk about this. I'm going to discuss, because the image does not necessarily correspond with the text at this point. But this is an image of a lady that many people know from history, Sarah Batman, and the image that was created. And in many ways, even Sarah and Brit are talking about something that is remedial, about nudity. The way that we view nudity is something that is unresolved in our past. This lady, again, I'm going to try to talk about her, but maybe not. Let me just move to the next image and then try to discuss relating to that. Again, it goes back to what Sarah was talking about in history. I'm going to try and discuss 3 images in the next position. Okay, now, I don't know if you can see that clearly. It's quite a popular story of, what's her name? Kim Kardashian. She did a nude shoot recently, and it was quite controversial. And this is a response from somebody who's talking about relating this story over here and this and that. And then she says, when I looked at the spread, all I saw was a not so subtle reincarnation of Sarah Batman. Imagery that is steeped in centuries of racism, oppression, and misogyny. Sarah Batman was a woman whose large buttocks brought her questionable fame and caused her to spend much of her life being poked and prodded as a sexual object in a freak show. And this was in Europe. And the person that is quoting this is called Blue Teluzma. And she's saying, the article was, Kim Kardashian doesn't realize she is the butt of an old racial joke. Now, I go back to quote the work of, again, that's an image that you recognize from photojournalism. This is what Adichie is also saying, the same text of the danger of a single story. If I had not grown up in Nigeria, and if all I knew about Africa were from popular images, I too would think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, and incomprehensible people, fighting senseless wars, dying of poverty and AIDS, unable to speak for themselves, and waiting to be saved by a kind white foreigner. Now, this image is an image of somebody that you know, I'm sure, musician, British musician. Yes, Bob Geldof, in the 84, when he wanted to save all of Africa, in Ethiopia. Think of Ethiopia, and what do you see? Perhaps a starving child, flies in her eyes and belly distended, painfully thin adults in raggedy clothes, staring balefully at the camera in a fetid refugee camp. Or possibly a famous self-declared savior from the West, striding purposefully past the decaying corpse of an animal beside a dusty road. Think again. See, instead, a booming capital city, its cafes filled with graduates, and cranes lining the horizon. The nation that is one of the world's largest livestock producers and recently became the second country to take delivery of Boeing's new 787 passenger jet. An economy that is doubled in size this century and is growing at 7.5%. Few countries symbolize the disconnect between the outdated Western perceptions of Africa and fast-changing realities on the ground better than Ethiopia, the continent's second populous nation, whose long-serving leader, Meles Zenawi, died last week. Although the examples of one country can never fully explain a diverse continent, this ancient nation illustrates in many ways Africa's progress, potential, and problems. Mostly is a picture of amazing progress, far removed from the usual stereotypes over there presented by much of the media and their allies in the aid lobby. They offer simplistic images of death and destruction, ignoring complex realities of the continent encompassing 54 countries and 11.6 million square miles, in which life is becoming more peaceful and prosperous. But there is a new Africa emerging, powered by capitalism, embracing globalization, and finally shaking off the shackles of colonialism and the Cold War that proved so crippling to development. Just look at the land of Live Aid, one of the world's fastest growing nations. A sub-Saharan success, like six more out of the 10 most expanding economies. Poverty is far from banished, but it's a grinding way of life for millions. But their numbers are falling fast. And this is quoting Ian Barrell. Our image of Africa is hopelessly obsolete in The Observer, August 2012. Okay, this next part is a little bit dubious, and maybe if you allow me, I just go through it. It's getting a bit okay. Yeah. The image and the racial stereotypes. Again, it's still part of the same discussion. Black skin is the black skin covered in soot or dirt that needs to be washed off. The Swata Pit or Black Peter. Then I want to quote something again from something that I picked up in the news. I'm going to say who it is after that. It is an old Dutch children's tradition, Saint Nicholas and Black Pete. It's not about a green or brown pit, and I cannot change that. I can only say that my friends in the Netherlands Antilles are very happy with the Saint Nicholas celebration because they have to paint their faces, because I don't have to paint their faces. When I play Black Peas, I'm for days trying to get the grime off my face. This is quoting the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Rutte, when confronted with a question by Dutch-American journalist Kevin Robertson of the US news blog Examiner.com at a press conference on Sunday, preceding the Nuclear Security Summit. And then this is quoting again something from the same text. The Prime Minister takes no responsibility for the shared slavery history in the kingdom and the way black people are being treated. The Prime Minister still uses colonial politics. Rutte can take off his grime, but not his colonial thinking, stated OCAN, a consultative council for Dutch Caribbean persons in the Netherlands. The organization said it would invite Rutte to talk about the so-called Afrophobia in the Netherlands and the kingdom. Again, this is from the Daily Herald on 26th March 2014. This image is an image because it was quite shocking for me when I came here, because the Netherlands is one of the most advanced countries, in their thinking and liberal, in their ways. So I found it very, very scary, personally, as a black person, seeing the image of the short pit. And I have to apologize also to the gentleman who was the model in the class, because I connected my class where we went with my anger for the story of the short pit. So at that time, I was just really angry about that. So now I'm a little calm about that. I'm trying to really understand this. Maybe it's not really racist. Maybe it's just me thinking from a different point of view. So because of that, I can skip the next part. Yeah, okay. Bridging gaps of differences is a responsibility for us all, to own our actions and not simply lay the wrongs in the past. The past holds all the lies that underpin racism, injustice, and fear. It is obvious that for a legend to carry on that makes a black person grimy with dirt is cementing a lie in the minds of children and young people. That to be black is to be soiled, to be dirty, to be grimy, and therefore it connotes the need to cleanse and become white again. And we have a scenario in Africa today where I make a painting actually about that, where we have black people who are very interested now of having the long flowing hair. They feel more comfortable when they look like the women in the West. So they like to do colorful hair. Red hair, you find them With blonde hair, you find them as well. You find them basically trying to be white. And I think this is something that is in the subconscious. I remember talking about the subconscious, you know. So a lot of propaganda or lies or whatever can be planted by the image in the subconscious. Maybe I can just go back to that. It's a bit controversial for me to show this, to, here, I think. So I'm a bit nervous, yeah? Okay, what of the children who are told every year that they are soiled, dirty, or even called black pits? Is my time up? I don't have enough, but I'll just try to go. How does that affect their self-esteem? We should not be overly simplistic about such issues. And I know most of the problem children, even in Holland right now, have got to be the coloreds, because they're facing an identity crisis, you know. They see themselves in that context. Some of them are called black pits. We should not be, okay, why should a child's tradition then be so overtly insensitive to the racial conflicts of the black children in its own society and beyond? Because we refuse to deal with such issues, the image we use continues to sponsor the prejudices and differences they espouse, therefore carrying it over to the next generation. For this, Africa and all black people should forgive Europe for this deeply hurtful tradition, regardless of whether they ask for it or not. It is, however, important to note, even when we attack Europe for racism, that the Africans, and Ugandans in particular, are their own worst perpetrators of racism and racist stereotype and views of this tribe and this other tribe. The Banyankole and the Bachiga, for instance, refer to the Luo speakers using the term Bakoko. Bakoko means animal. Means an animal. The Bahima have a saying that describes the epitome of stupidity with the word Muganda. There is a popular description amongst the Ugandan population that the Basoga start to understand at the age of 40 years. The Banyankole describe Baganda as thieves. The different tribes look at each other with eyes of disapproval and disdain. And just in case you are doubting, my silly examples above should help in confirming the fact that Uganda, with our most diverse culture in the world, are not only finding our feet to work with each other across the tribes and cultures, and looking beyond ancient intertribal mistrust and abhorrence. Still, in this day and age, many cultural issues are simply not put up for discussion. It is what it is, because that is what and how our ancestors did it. It's something you hear all the time. That's why they'll tell you, this is Uganda, this is Africa, like Britt was saying. End of discussion. So there's a lot that is not being discussed. So at the core of that is some of the issues we're discussing. Moreover, even though the many tribes across Africa share a great history, there is very little intercultural activity across the continent of Africa to discuss the way forward as Africans. Most Africans who are in Europe or America know very little about the continents and the peoples of Africa. Thus, when they travel abroad, or when we travel abroad, I would like to include myself, when we travel abroad, we continue to spread this ignorance about Africa by behaving badly and further cementing the stereotypes about Africa. We have pockets of criminally minded Africans busy running dubious schemes and scams all over Europe. This obviously damages Africa in the eyes of the world. Africans are doing little at this moment to clean up the soiled image of Africa. In relation with this, more pressure should be put on making Africans engage in more meaningful ways and through research to improve the knowledge bases of the Africans about Africans in different regions. West Africans, for instance, are cut off from the East Africans, while the Southern Africans think they are in Europe. The North Africans claim to have their past in Africa and their future in Europe. Indeed, Morocco and Tunisia have desired more to join the European Union. Morocco recently exposed their ignorance about the world when they refused to host the African Nations Cup of 2015 because they think all Africa is suffering under the attacks of Ebola. So how do we then use image as a cure for ignorance? I think that's a really good thing, because these images that come out from that, please don't look in here for answers for that. But if we knew more about each other, then we would appreciate each other better. My coming here has made me understand the Dutch people a lot better as human beings, not just as donors, not just as these rich people, not just as these entities that I cannot relate with. It has made me understand that at the end of the day, it's just people. That's why I began my discussion by saying that there are no bad people, but there can be bad systems. The picture image is important in fighting ignorance. Without interaction of some sort, especially where we ask ourselves difficult questions, it is difficult to bridge differences, or indeed distances. I'm sorry, I'm limping along now. Moreover, it takes a great amount of time to achieve this. The social media is placed in pole position to help bring knowledge across cultures in a cheap and accessible way. And again, I want to use the example with the Pricca, what this Pricca practice is doing. It's bringing us physically here, but also it is connecting people using the social media, which is a really commendable job. So thank you, Anka. Thank you, Andrea. I'm very glad to be part of this change. There are other stories that are not about, Of course, Africa. I'm going to quote again the same Chimamanda Adichie. Forgive me for being uncreative and not researching enough. Of course, Africa is a continent full of catastrophes. They are immense ones, such as the horrific rapes in Congo and depressing ones, such as the fact that 5,000 people apply for one job vacancy in Nigeria. But there are other stories that are not about catastrophe, and it is very important. It is just as important to talk about them. I've always felt that it is impossible to engage properly with a place or a person without engaging with all the stories of that place and that person. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs the people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. So what if, before my Mexican trip, I had followed the immigration debate from both sides, the US and the Mexican? What if my mother had told us that Fidel's family was poor and hardworking? What if we had an African television network that broadcast diverse African stories all over the world? What the Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe calls a balance of stories. Again, this is from the danger of a single story. Images can still be used to bring about a proper understanding of Africa. And this is where I will appeal, for the people who are in that place to do that. And I thank Andrea, because she's giving us a story which is not unbalanced in that way. It's pretty balanced. Images can still be used to bring about a proper understanding of Africa. And indeed, Uganda, as human beings with whom the present and future must be shared, regardless of the wrongs of the past. Projects that promote Africa telling our own story are very important, as they also get the Africans themselves to think about how they want to be portrayed in the image, in the mind of the world. The main battle of our time is that against the poor image of Africa abroad. Breaking down the myriad stereotypes and negative views of what and where Africa should be kept in the world versus the Africans' own agendas, interests, and aspirations. Africa cannot be viewed highly by others when she still has a dim view of herself. Her ability to create and nurture a beautiful and strong future for herself and her many children. Ultimately, Africa will have to own and make their own agenda, rather than sit around and wait for others to decide what is good for us. I'm not going to finish all this, but I'm just going to skip to the end. These anachronistic attitudes reflect the West's myopic view but we cannot afford to cling on to them in a world changing so fast. It is time to embrace the emergence of the new Africa. Again, this is from Ian Birrell. Our image of Africa is hopefully obsolete, in the Observer of Sunday, 26 August 2012. Let me just end with this image and just read this. I hope you're not too tired. Afropolitanism. Afropolitanism is an attempt at embracing the core positives of Africa and fuse them with the positives of the West, and saying that, hey, we are Africans. We love being African, but we are also modern. So if we really want to reach out and bridge our differences, as this whole project suggests, then some compromises should be made across the board. Whether we like it or not, the West's view of Africa has been fed on false ideas of Africa, and they must reconsider how they structure their media's outlook on Africa, as well as repositioning their aid programs to sectors that actually bring good outcomes for the West and for Africa. To reiterate, Africa herself must take over her own agenda. We can rely on push from outside, but ultimately we have to do the real work. So I stop there, and the rest of this is just to thank you, our sponsors. I would like to thank the Minerva Academy of the University of Applied Sciences Groningen for funding our visit as a part of the collaboration with the Ugandan Christian University. I thank in particular Andrea Steltjens, Anke Commons, and Dorothy van de Molen. My Dutch, I hope, is getting better. We are very grateful for your kind support, and we hope to continue this collaboration for coming years. I would like also to acknowledge the tremendous work of the working team at Minerva who put together the Go Forward show. And I really like, to acknowledge Andrea and the students, Sana van der Wel, Luke van der Berg is over there in the back, Francesca Alcantara, she's back at the back as well, Doha Denise, I can't say the last words easily, Francesca Brosone, and Britt van Sloan. I'm sure I've not said them well, but I've tried. I've learned a lot from you. And I'm sure Sarah Jangolet has learned a lot from you too. I would also like to thank Yela de Groot, Renee Albert, Yap Elzinga, am I saying it crazily? Tijmen van Dijk, and Betty Koistra. And the whole working team in the photography workshop, and as well as the Academy Minerva at large. I would also like to thank Trudy Kramer and Ryan Yela Tapstra for allowing Sarah and I to attend their class sessions. I thank also Britt van Sloan in particular for coming to Uganda, and to Uganda Christian University, mostly on our own budget, I think. I also thank Margot Slomp for allowing us to attend the roundtable session discussion. That was quite enjoyable, and for her insight on African art education. I also like to thank the Fine Art Coordinator, Dr. William Kayamba, the Dean of the Faculty of Education and Arts, Reverend Dr. Rugendo, the Chairman of the Staff Development Committee, Dr. Christopher Vyaruhanga, the Officer in Charge of Staff Scholarship and Staff Development Funding Programs, Ms. Krista Oluka, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, Ms. Anne Katavazi, I'm about to end, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs, Dr. Benon Musinguzi, and the Vice Chancellor, Reverend Dr. John Senyonyi, and the Uganda Christian University at large, who funded part of my travel to Groningen, who put together several correspondences and allowed me time away to be part of this academic exchange. I also want to thank them for their interest in being part of this project as well. I would also like to thank 32 Degrees East, or Uganda Arts Trust, for being the contact persons between myself and the Academy Minerva and Andrea. I would like to thank my fellow Ugandan Curators/artists, Robina Nansubuga, Violet Nantume, Rosario Achola, Sana Gateja, Papa Trill, I forget his other name, Emmanuel Wanga, sorry?
Papa Shabani.
Papa Shabani, sorry. Emmanuel Wanga, Nathan Omiel, and Ian Mwesiga for participating in this project. Last but not least, I'd like to thank my colleague Nathan Omiel, who had his valuable input in this project and also stood in my shoes while I was away. I would also like to thank my painting and sculpture students who took part in this project at Uganda Christian University and who were represented by Sarah Ejangulet in Groningen. So thank you and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Eria, you, no, it's fine. You brought up so much that I think we could discuss about this for days. So what I'm going to do is just return to what this all began with and what it all is built around, which is the project you've seen in the Koepelzaal, and share with you some experiences that I had, and also for a moment shift the attention from the issue of the distances or differences to what happens when you go to a place you don't know yet. I don't know if that, and that's what this quote for me, a quote by an 18th century British writer, but for me refers to, which is when does a place that is new, a place that you want to go to bridge a distance, or where you're literally bridging a distance, when does it become a reality? When does it actually become part of your system? Because I think going somewhere doesn't guarantee that it is, that you're actually bridging a distance. And I also wanted to briefly address why actually that exhibition that is part of the whole Pricca Practice program chose so few photographs. We'll come to that in part of what I wanted to show you. It all does start with photographs, namely with this platform that I set up a couple of years ago, which is called History in Progress Uganda. Really started just from my own curiosity. I came to Uganda as a visitor, wanted to see more and get to know more about the history of that place I visited that I really didn't understand. And as a strategy, I started collecting and digitizing photographs, and I was sharing them online on this Facebook page and on a website. One of the things that happened while posting the photographs, Anke addressed it briefly in her introduction, is that people responded to photographs, recognizing people. For instance, this lady was, the photo comes from a school archive from one of the oldest girls' schools in Uganda, was recognized by her granddaughter, who says, "Wow, that is my grandmother." And she's mother to Mr. Peter Mulira, the lawyer, and Mr. Hamukasa, presidential advisor and former minister of ICT. I contacted that lady, and offering her to get a high-resolution version of this low-resolution upload on Facebook, which she accepted, but she also said, please contact my family, because they have a huge archive. And that's where this whole project started. That family turned out to be the family of Hamukasa, the grandfather again of Hamukasa, the ICT minister. And this is one of the houses built by Hamukasa around 1900. And the house that is now used for monthly family gatherings, and that is also the occasion you see here. During those gatherings, several issues are addressed. The family is trying to support people in their surroundings that have big challenges. They're helping them with clothes, sometimes with other means of living. And they also have this family legacy to discuss. So that's what they do in these afternoons. One of the first things I did was go to one of these afternoons and explain who I was and why I was interested in digitizing their their family archive. That's what you see happening here. And this is now 2.5 years almost ago, I think. And of course, photos had to be made. So that's something I did, and I also was on the photographs. And this is the inside of the house. I last week did a small presentation for students African literature in Leiden, and one of the students there asked me, "Is this normal?" And no, this is not normal. At least a lot of it is not normal. Hamukasa was a very important chief, and this family is an extremely elite family. What is normal, and that's actually kind of interesting again in what this student was asking me, is that the photographs are up so high on a reel on the wall. That is something you see everywhere, also in the not so elite households. And this student worked in Malawi and said that it's nowhere there in Malawi. So it's funny how even these questions, when not asked specifically, get interpreted wrongly and give strange answers. Anyway, so this is the world I entered and started digitizing the family. The family has 2 houses still that were built by Hamukasa. This is the other house. This is in town, in Kampala, very close to the kingdom government seat. The other house is in Mukono, very close to the Uganda Christian University. That actually exists because Hamukasa donated his land to that university and then First Theological College. Here you see that Minister of ICT on the right. I'm just giving you a bit of, the reality that I walked into or that I work in. So he's a grandson of Hamukasa and a son of the lady on that first photograph. The lady second on the left is his sister. The lady in the middle is the daughter of another of Hamukasa's children. And on the far left is Michael Chibuika Baganda, who was, when I first started working there, the librarian of the family library. So he introduced me to the collection, and he unfortunately passed away earlier this year. This is another overview of that house. These houses are still in, so that house in Nasuti, close to Mukono, is still in use for these family gatherings. This house is lived in by Margaret, the lady who you just saw in the yellowish dress. She doesn't really live in this room. This room is like a museum. But it's alive. It's not a dead place. And this is what the digitization actually looks like. It's not a fancy studio setup. It's a small handheld camera. We now use another camera, but it's still sort of the same situation. You sit outside, you get your photographs, and you photograph them. That's what I mostly do these days as a photographer, photograph photographs. This is my colleague Romanzi Cannon, who has from the beginning and with a short break in between been working with me on History in Progress Uganda. I spent some nights also in this house, and this is what it looks like in the morning. The good Africa, a nice view of the good Africa. And this is the family library, or part of it, the part in Kampala, in the capital city, that gives a really interesting view into what Hamukasa read. So it's to quite a large extent the books he had, and he was the kind of man who made notes when he read what. So you can literally trace his reading biography. This is again in the Kampala house that, as you can see, this is Margaret's bedroom, and she sleeps in her grandfather's bed. That's how alive the collection, or the collection and the places where that collection are. This is us working in the family library, and us is here the librarian who took over from Michael Chibuika Baganda, and René Roymans, who is here and worked with me for some time on this collection and played a very important role in that, actually. This is again a situation in what does that look like? What does that reality that founded this project? And we have our off moments also in the good Africa. And this gives you a little bit of a view of what that collection then actually is. If we think here of an archive, we think of something kind of sterile, but working for an hour in the archive gives your hands these kind of traces of, well, time, I guess, and dust. And this is the actual material we're working with. Not quite spick and span, but eaten by mold, by insects, by just time. This is again us working. And this is 3 months ago. Again, a family meeting, monthly meeting. So I keep giving them information on what I'm doing and what is happening, and they give their feedback on that. And this is where it actually all began, what led to this project. So I've been digitizing that collection, we have been digitizing that collection, partly helped by a grant from the British Library, which gives a bit of an idea how important this collection and this man and his history is considered to be. And when I was digitizing all those photographs, I also started digitizing the documents. You just saw what state they were in, and my Luganda is very, very lousy. Worse than not worse than your Dutch, actually. But anyway, so I also started digitizing the documents, and those documents were mostly a correspondence, and I could see that it was between important people in the kingdom and with colonial administration and family members. But among those was this list. It's 5 pages, you probably saw it in the exhibition, and I immediately recognized it as something strange. And then I had it translated, and first actually I asked the librarian, what is this list? And she said, oh, it's a list with photographs. So there I was, and I immediately, everything was full attention. I had the full list translated, and then it turned out to not be a list of photographs, but a list of images that Hamukasa wanted to have to illustrate a book triptych that he wrote about 3 Buganda kings, Kabakas. And I also noticed that it was very unlikely that those images were actually made and existed through the translations. And then I started using this list as an open invitation to engage with history. Iria already referred to it a little bit. It also brought to me something else, which is, and again this was addressed by Iria, but not with the use of the word, how echifanani, how picture and images are different things, but maybe also the same things, and how its context and how we think and talk about it defines what it actually is. I mean, here already, of course, because in that it was translated to me as a list of photographs, that was someone telling me what they thought I wanted to hear. And that was, it worked. I asked 2 Ugandan friends to talk about this in front of a camera because they had shown me that they could do that in a very wonderful way. And I've shown it already several times, and I can't get enough of it, so I'm going to share it again with you. 2.5 minutes.
What's your name?
Oh, I'm Nathan. Nathan Anier.
Okay, what I forgot to say... Oh, I can't stop it.
I'll start with Simudanyuma. What does it mean to you?
Simudanyuma. It's almost like clearly stating that we shall never go back.
Yeah.
Okay, because Simudanyuma, it's on the basis of somebody exclaims, like you see, there is a journey we are on, and somehow backward can never be the way.
Yeah, but Nyuma at the same time means the buttocks. So how do you explain these two, Simuda and Nyuma, the buttocks?
Because, you see, the buttocks could be figurative speech for the backside. Okay?
Yeah.
Something you can never look at again. You may refer to, but you'll never see.
Yeah.
Because it's past. And so, Simunda is, we'll never go back to the buttocks. We will never look back to the buttocks.
Well, I'm confused about this word echifanani because the translation here says picture, and in my mind I'm thinking, what is image in Uganda?
Image is, it's actually echifanani too.
And photo?
Echifanani.
And picture?
Echifanani.
So we have 3 words, meaning just 1 word. Echifana.
It's actually Echifana. I'm also looking at it as a mental picture, a mental image. Because some of these, as you read, we shall say maybe look at, we actually say Hamukasa's own viewing. He's seeing something going on and he's thinking, a picture of people say maybe going to worship the small gods, okay? An image or a thought, it is a mental focus.
In this context, an image works more than a picture because by then, let's say, example, there were no cameras.
Exactly.
So
it is mental. It's really mental because he's imagining if he had the opportunity, he would put it down.
So meaning in this case, image of people is the right word.
It's the best.
Than picture
it's the
of
best.
people.
That's very true. Okay.
You can enjoy them for 8 minutes in the exhibition. What I forgot to say before is that, and I'm going to skip this because otherwise we don't have time for discussion, is that Simuda Nyuma is the title of the book triptych that Hamukasa wrote. So that's why they start with discussing how to even translate Simuda Nyuma. And it's been translated in 2 ways so far, which is the old way that you find in some literature referring to these books is Go Forward, which is also the title of the exhibition. It's at the current translation that the family uses in the way they are now publishing the books is Go Forward Ever, Backward Never. I'm just going to walk through a few photographs that include Hamukasa, just again to, where does this man become a reality? Where does his world become a reality? Here, in these photographs, and I saw, of course, many more than you now see, or in what happened with these captions, or I keep falling back to that, but it should be descriptions of images and not captions, by these artists and art students. I don't know, for me. I mean, this is really a question. I know that for me, Uganda is still becoming more of a reality. Every time I go there, I get a better grasp of it, and I live there now part of the year. So I really don't know when this happens, when something that is strange becomes really part of your system, when you have really bridged the distance. And with that question, I would like to ask Britt and Iria and Sarah to come forward again and we have about 20 more minutes, I would say, to talk about the issues raised in the 3 presentations now, actually. Yes, I think so. And I think what we'll do is you take one microphone and share it among you, and I will walk among you on that side. It may be hard to start off, because so much has been said, but are there burning questions I can... Angelique is looking at me, digging it up. I made some notes, but... Oh yeah, I have one. Iria, you started off with mentioning image and object as noun and as verb. What do you actually mean with image or object as verb?
Yeah, I think I was, again, hoping to look at those things we're discussing, the image and the picture, or idea. An image becomes, an idea is an image, but then it's in a different form. An image can become an action, or an image can be a description, or the image can be something. So
it can be doing something.
It can be doing something, yes. So it's
not an object, but it's a moment that creates an action.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm answering that question. But also it was, those are words that I also put there as questions for myself, which I don't think I necessarily was answering. Yeah, so it's maybe somebody needs to help us also. Yeah.
Well, if I respond to that, I actually think that is one of the things I'm learning. That here, in general, the distance between the person observing the image and what the image says or does is bigger than once an image starts speaking to someone in Uganda. Then that distance sort of collapses and it becomes something you relate to, which is an action. Yeah, which is something I'm really still learning about. And it also relates to the quote Anke was using in her introduction by the son of Musa Katuramu, who says that the meaning of a photograph, you can't know what a photograph is about because it's in the eye of the sea. You can't really talk about it. The action is in this sort of private relationship with the image. Anyway, that's my personal learning curve in this whole thing. What else did I? Yeah, like the other notes were really like that are really relevant for me, and maybe not so much for discussion now. So, but maybe it's everybody is sort of beaten by everything that has been said, because it's so much. Even Anno? Oh, look, yes, I'm coming.
Yeah, I have a question for Sarah and Iria. It's more about the nudity. For Sarah, do people in your class use nudity sometimes? And since Iria is your teacher, I'm kind of curious, how do you react to the students who do use nudity? And is there any pressure from the higher-ups at the university to put the focus on something else than nudity?
To answer your first question, very rarely is nudity used by my colleagues in class. If any is used, it could be just one or two people, and even then it's not complete nudity. Yeah, there really isn't any at all.
If we look at the material that was made by your colleagues as part of this project, it always refers to the past. Huh?
Yes.
And actually that is also how Hamukasa uses it in the start of his book, that those are the ways of the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first of all use body parts. I think I just like to call them body parts because they're symbolic of something bigger than just themselves. So I'm usually not caught into that debate about nude and nakedness because I just use the work. If I need to use it, I use it. As for my students, I don't know. I don't know if that's a mental block even for themselves, coming from a lot of things in our past, because the example that they were giving about Karamoja. There's a statement saying in Uganda to describe impatience. When somebody is impatient with something, they say, we shall not wait for Karamoja to develop. Meaning that we shall not wait for the so-called backward people from that part of the country to catch up with us. And the example they gave was that I also had an image from the Afa populations, people who are cow herders, who have a history with nakedness. And because they were in dry areas, desert places, it was quite normal to have people defining their dress according to their, where they are. And it's quite normal to find them, Even my wife is a Luo speaker. And their history is also the same thing. Really short pieces of cloth, really, just to cover the main parts, Otherwise, everything else, is pretty part of the culture. It's just happened with colonialism when they said, no, that's primitive, that's backward. And then also against the backdrop of the Batman story, where they totally humiliated the African form, It was actually, they were using a lot of comparison with the Vitruvian man, you know? And they're saying, this is not proportional. According to this and that, these are not humans, you know? The proportions are wrong. The buttocks, this is not normal. The labia is too long, and all these details. You know, it was really something that got into our systems. And the colonialists tried to make it part of our system that, you know, this is wrong. When you find people who express themselves in a certain way, the culture is wrong. Now just pick up a new culture. So we have those conflicts. And in many ways, a lot of these things are coming back from the past to bite us. So for me, as an African, it's quite normal to have thighs exposed, you know. Of course, we now have the conflict with Islam and Christianity. I think I mentioned that a little bit. We have those conflicts now coming into play, and as well as a colonialist approach. So, so nudity is already a subject of mine. Students want to approach it, they approach it, you know. Obviously, from up above, their policy will be against pornography, promoting pornography, promoting subversion, you know, perversion, you know. But I've not come across any experience, people saying, why did you use that in your painting? I just simply paint, really. And of course, I'm also very aware of the history of where I'm working and the sensitivity that they have. So again, the context is what comes into play. So a person giving birth is not pornographic. So it is a message in itself. And even now at our school, we have people who have made sculptures of pregnant women who are nude. I don't know if you saw those. Do you see them? So I think it's accepted. I mean, a context, and it's not like Sometimes it becomes difficult also when you just find something in a certain position. Yeah, so it's obviously a touchy issue, because in Kenya, just this week, the past week, there were women who were being, you know, undressed over the same stuff of wearing short skirts. And there are always going to be conflicts. But being artists, we're always the most liberal. We're the ones who understand things more than others. So that puts me in a better position. Yeah.
I guess the nudity images may be a nice example, actually, of images as verbs, but that's Sarah.
I could share something about my colleague that intended to do a sculpture of a woman delivering her child. What he said was that to begin with, the assignment that we were given was to go to a particular place on campus and approach the people in charge of that particular location and kind of pitch an idea for a monumental sculpture that the student would put there for them. When my colleague Sam went with his sketches, he intended to make a pregnant woman in the nude delivering her child. What he said, his experience was, he reached there and he showed like the person who was there, the sketch. So she looks at the sketches and she's slightly taken aback and she says, why don't you put some clothes on this? So that was kind of the beginning of our whole exploration of the subject, because it was actually at that same sculpture class that we decided to go into the subject.
Again, I would wish to thank you for your contributions, firstly. It's very interesting coming from the country where you quote Kenneth Clark. Clark, of course, was past director of the National Gallery in London, and his classic book, which is actually, as you say, called The Nude, is in fact a beautiful volume. Perhaps we've moved on a little bit from him, but perhaps we haven't. Because the thing which shocks me is that just how colonial an image you create of Uganda and all the past, and there you have the almost naked figure or nude figure of Jesus of Nazareth being crucified in your churches, and yet you can't even talk about the naked or the nude in the same sort of context. It's a curious contradiction of terms. And I just wonder again, as with the first presentation, is it time to move on Kenneth Clark was responsible for creating war artists. War artists have always existed, but during the Second World War, he had a government decree, if you like, to create artists who went out and painted and drew acts of warfare, or the results of war. And the photographic image is very direct, is very formalized, has a viewpoint and a point of view, but I just wonder, is it time to move on from the photographic image and to use, as indeed Clark dictated, painters and drawers to go out, and there you create a distance between subject and artist and viewer. I'm just thinking of Mervyn Peake, who was invited to visit as a war artist the liberation of Belsen, and his wonderful drawings which came out of it, and the photographs of Miller also from the same, and you compare those two. Peake, the actual graphic artist, and Miller, the photographer, the stark nakedness of maybe the photograph and the nude of Mervyn Peake. I'm not quite sure. I may be playing with words.
Well, and giving a lot of contextualization again, but...
I think that for Africa, we need to go through all the stages of art that everyone else has gone through. In Europe, we have art that explores the nude completely and quite openly and honestly. And in Africa, we haven't really done that yet, in Uganda in particular at least. And I feel like that's a stage that we must go through to reach a particular level of artistry.
I'm not sure I've read a lot of the books that the gentleman very highly, read, but it's obvious, and also this discussion really is helping us create to bridge that distance in mindsets about what we think about Africa and how we portray Africa, and how the Africans themselves need to approach their subjects. And I think again, if I go back to relate to the question that he asked, that Luke was asking, similar to that, is that how are we moving forward with that? How are we moving forward with that? I think I like very much in the presentation where they're talking about nudity and nakedness being two different things. And also we put in the context that the media craze, I didn't show an image of Kim Kardashian, bringing the sexuality right back into being a woman. Some of these stereotypes are not helping the women's cause very much, because what these people see about art, and to be honest, the leaders in Africa, not Africa, in Uganda in particular, and the people who are in the top leadership and people who are in places in universities are not people who go to museums. When they come here, they don't go to museums. They have no idea what's happening in art history. And just to be honest, they don't. And the man that they were talking about is a father. He's a priest, Lokodo. He's a priest. He's a Catholic priest. That means he's well educated about nudity, because the priests are taught a lot of art history, about history of the world and history of cultures, and how it's depicted from Renaissance times to the present and its place in life. Because some of that nudity in that time was not about sexuality per se. It was about purity, purity and the honesty of it. Being loving your own body. And respecting your own body and making everybody else do the same, But against that, we are conflicting now with a lot of our kids are now watching pornography. They use the social internet for pornography. So the conflict between art and image,
and what image does, the verb again.
Yeah. So I think all those balances that need to be pushed. On one hand, they're talking about our young children are being subverted. I remember I once made paintings, 3 little drawings, because I'm an illustrative painter in my exhibition. And a cousin of mine bought these 3 little drawings and took them and put them in his house. And his wife is very religious. So when he put them in his house, she came and said, "Oh, how do you put naked pictures in my house? You know, take them out. You know." And then and it was a real crisis for me, you know. And everybody was being told, "Oh, that artist, he's painting naked women." And then my little nephews were asking me privately, you know, the little boys then saying, "Oh, so art is about making naked women?" Huh? Yeah, so it was the drama of it all, and you know, I couldn't understand how just making honest expression of feminine power became about naked people. So I think we need to move forward where the context, separate the two. What is the intention? What is the power of it? You know, and again, like I was saying about a lot of things, we are still not in the position to discuss things honestly and openly. There's still so many veneers, you know, religiousness, and yet a lot of these people who are fighting these things in public actually consume them in private. So the contradictions for me are also very telling. That people who are telling people not to do certain things are doing even more immoral things. Huh? So it's a delicate balance, and maybe we need time to be able to get honesty back into the public space, because there's a lot of intransigence in a lot of these discussions, and a lot of again, if I use the examples, the example of Desire Luzinda,
the pop star who has been
who showed the naked picture,
the fragment we saw.
Actually, I think it was a big deal because I actually saw them. I also saw these pictures. And for that case, it wasn't a depiction for art for herself, you know, or whoever put them up there. It was personal. This person wanted to hurt somebody in the deepest way possible in the eyes of the world, and to diminish herself, diminish her being, you know, before the world. I don't know if he succeeded. Maybe he might have done the opposite. But it was a sad, really, episode. And unfortunately, these sad episodes are sort of what make it to BBC. And then they become the idea of, oh, what's happening in this country? So again, I'd like to ask you also, whereas we watch the news and watch the TV and all these things, we have to also have an open mind to be able to say, but really, what is the real background to that, you know? I don't know if I'm making any sense here, because, yeah, right, thank you.
I think this makes a lot of sense, and this might be, even though this discussion hasn't really gotten to the real discussion point, but it is 4:45. So I suggest we go back to the informal way of discussing again, keeping this open mind in mind, and maybe then Zwarte Piet can come back up. I don't know. I am going to, in a very Dutch way, present our 3 guests with a nice flower arrangement. And again, we don't have a drink here or something to close off this afternoon, but that is available in the Noorderlichtgalerie, 5 minutes walk from here, where we have another exhibition, hopefully, to enjoy, and a little book to launch. So hope to be joined by you on that side. And thank you again, Iria, Sarah, Ben, and of course also Brit. Yes, and Anke can say one more thing.
I really like to say one more thing. I really loved to have you here, our Uganda guests, and I want to say that I learned a lot from you. And the most important thing I learned from you is that an intercultural dialogue is not an event, it's a process. I will keep that in mind, and I will come to Uganda, okay?
Okay. We can go for a walk.